obsession over our countries. And there really is. There really is an obsession over our countries. It involves resources. It involves genetics. And also involves sex. And yes.
And you see this type of let's call it attitude or relationship towards our part of the world come strictly from black gringos, or is it something you also see in, say, white gringos or other people?
Yeah, white Americans too. Same thing. I'm hearing the same thing about them because they're pushing their stuff onto people from like our backgrounds as well.
And how do you explain that? Why do the gringos, whether white or black, have this dynamic relationship towards our part of the world and its peoples? Why do you think that happens?
Because for me, I'm trying to be honest about the Americans here. I think personally, there's something going on here because whatever it is going on between the white and black Americans, we're in the middle of this. We're like the porn website where you got the girl in the middle, you got a dick in one end, and like in your ass, you got a dick in front. And we're like,
I don't watch porn, to be honest with you. So it's kind of that kind of scenario. I understand what you're trying to say. I have no idea what you said because my mind just blocked it out.
Okay, you blocked it out, but the audience probably knew. So look, it's basically we're in the middle of this. So there's this white versus black.
But why do you characterize it as a woman getting fucked?
Because the thing about it is that
do you feel like a woman that's getting fucked?
Well, do I feel like I get fucked? No, I'm using it as analogies for jokes. That's just it.
That's a quirky joke, man. That's a weird joke to tell to a man you're just meeting for the first time. Just saying.
Well, hey, look, man, you're on YouTube. You gotta give some sort of something to the kids.
Yeah. I understand that. I mean, I'm vulgar, but man, I'm not necessarily sexually explicit.
Well, again, it's part of the territory. So I'll try to make it PG, make it simple. Don't worry about it.
You can use cuss words all day, but
yeah. I mean, the thing. Okay, how about this?
What I'm trying to get at, Kem, is if you could give me a theory, a cohesive reason that you interpret as to why this dynamic, which you just described in a very vulgar way, but I also can't deny the truth in what you laid forth. Why do these people have this, I don't know what you can call it, like vampiric type of relationship or desire for our part of the world and our people?
It's because, to me personally, it's because I think here in the United States, you have white Americans and black Americans. I think both of these groups, I think they're so lost. I think a lot of them don't know what's going on. I think because they feel like they don't have a culture of their own. The family orientation is being deteriorated very dramatically.
Yeah. For both of them. For both groups.
Both groups, yeah. Both of them.
I would totally agree with everything you're saying.
And it's falling apart dramatically. And it's like they look at they kind of like, because it's funny because the accusation they say of Africans about Mexicans, for example, that's exactly the same thing white Americans say towards Mexicans too. Like they have this belief that we're out to go and killing them and all that stuff. White Americans say the same thing. It's almost like if it's a script.
Yeah, I would agree.
It feels that way. Someone like gave him a script because it's saying almost, it's like the difference is one's more of a black version, one's a white version, but it sounds literally the same.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when it comes to the racial aspect of it, they start to kind of like see us start picking like our racial makeup, like what's our race and all that stuff.
Allow me to share with you. Because I think we've noticed a lot of the same things. What you're saying is that these two people groups have fallen into a level of degeneracy. And it's like they're the fresh blood, the life force around here is Hispanos. You call Mexicans or Puerto Ricans or Cubans, whatever. I like to use more of an ethnic term as opposed to just specific nationalities. Because again, to them, we're all the same, right? We all get grouped together, which I'm perfectly fine with. So anyways, the reason this dynamic that you're pointing out is actually historical. It actually existed before, again, these countries were independent. The English were doing the same thing in the Spanish Empire, which we were a part of, right?
Yeah.
Spain itself, the modern country of Spain, isn't what we used to belong to. Spain is a piece of that old empire, right? I think a lot of people misinterpret some of the stuff I say, that they think that I'm saying we need a Spanish king. No, I think the Spanish could use our generosity to go save their asses and to kind of rescue them.
They're doing that right now, actually. We're the ones helping them out, actually. They're the ones coming to us, not the way around.
Yeah, because I think they've bought into this European lie. And I think that was a dynamic that always existed throughout the Spanish Empire. The right thing, I think, looking back, is that they should have done what the Portuguese did, which is they moved the capital from Portugal to the Americas, right? And that's why you see the Portuguese Americas are united in one single country like Brazil, even though it's really like 19 different countries in Brazil.
It's like the thing about it with that is that this is something I really, really believe. The problem is that here in the USA, the racism that was taught here was taught by the British. And what for example, the guy Radical talked about, the caste system, quote unquote, never realizing that the natives, the Aztecs, the minds of caste system as well.
Yeah, and the caste system was very loose. That's the thing. So the one of the ways that the Spanish Empire's enemies combated against it, not just through pirate ships in the seas. One of the ways that they combated against it was through propaganda, right? This was like the first time propaganda was ever used as a tool of warfare. So the French, the Dutch, and the English especially basically promoted this thing called the Black Legend, which at the same time, those Spaniards who rebelled against the crown and carved up, balkanized the empire, lost a bunch of territory to historical enemies, and created these little republiquettes that we all come from. Yeah. And they were all Spaniards. I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going. What was the last thing I said? They're all
Spaniards, republiquettes.
What did I say right before that?
All right, you're proposing
the Black Legend. So the leaders of these republiquettes had a vested interest to make the 300 years as a Spanish Empire look bad compared to their new system. And so we have this kind of inherited anti-Spanishness, and we have like this fake identity with like as if we're all pure Indios, even though the ones who promoted this ideology were actually pure Spaniards, right? One of the things about the Black Legend or the period of independence that's not really known is that most of the Indians actually fought to defend the empire and preserve they fought on the side of the crown. So, and it was the Spaniards here who fought against the crown in the Spanish Empire. But what you notice is that at the breakup of the empire, we entered a kind of quasi neo-colonial relationship now with the Anglos, whether in the form of England or the form of the United States, which is essentially just a subsidiary of that same Anglo power base.
Yeah, it's part of the it's part of the Anglophone British.
It's the same. It's the same elites.
And I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it's the same elites, and so, that war hasn't ended. Just because now we're here and the empires broke up, 300 years or 200 years ago, we've been 200 years as these republiquettes. Yeah. That dynamic, that warfare is still there, because you have to understand that the Anglos represent a civilization and we represent the opposite civilization.
It's kind of like, for example, the doctrine in the United States, it was all for imperialism, while the doctrine in Mexico was just to stay inside and be cool and chill. Let's not get involved in anything. Because, like, the region itself, I don't know, the coin to turn Latin America or Hispano-America, we're a very, very neutral region compared to the rest of the world. Very neutral. Like, we really don't get involved in world affairs.
Yeah, that's because we're not really in a position to. But even before the United States or the Republic of Mexico, that same war was still being conducted. It was just more of a kinetic war. but it's always been the same relationship. It's been to extract the wealth of these regions. And labor is another resource, right? Just like gold is. So they've now extracted labor overwhelmingly from Mexico, right? Basically, a huge chunk of Mexicans' peasant class has been extracted from Mexico. And Mexico just gets the remittance as opposed to the actual productive capacity of these people. But then you have to question, well, who's in charge of Mexico? Well, it's the same people who are in charge of Bogota and the other capital cities, who basically descend kind of from this criollo Spaniard elite, even though they've mixed too. But overwhelmingly, they come from the people who basically broke the empire apart. So it's like their power.
Okay, I got your position. Okay. Basically, during the independence, you did not like the fact that Creoles rebel against the Spanish monarchy.
I believe when you look at the dispassionately and you really do a sincere and honest effort to dig up the history of the 300 years of the Spanish Empire through its different phases, because it had very distinctive phases in different dynasties.
Gotcha.
I think it can legitimately be argued that things were better for the average person.
Oh, okay.
Materially, spiritually, I mean, on every front that you can think of, I think it could legitimately be argued. And I think it's an argument that maybe I haven't taken a full side on, but I can accept that there's an argument to be made here. Because now we've had 200 years as these republiquettes, which have basically been Anglo-Dominion over us. And now we can compare it to, well, what do we know about those 300 years as a Spanish Empire? Was it really as bad as we've been told? And what you've seen over the last 20 years all over Latin America and Spain, and even other scholars from different parts of Europe, is that they've actually done the work going through the records. They've actually, have been able to compile a picture of what those periods were like. And the evidence is showing that we were lied to a lot, both by these criollo elites that took over our regions and our countries, and then us as the American diaspora learning in American schools about the history of the Spanish Empire. We've been lied to tremendously.
Let me put it this way, OG. Let me. Have you ever met these wealthy elite class members?
The WASPs?
Yeah, pretty much.
Or the criollos? You're talking about the criollos?
Yeah, have you ever met them?
Yeah, of course I have.
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. Do you know that they intermix with only? Okay, basically, for people that don't know, we all have elite classes in our countries, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just talking about the audience here. I'm trying to make it more simple for them.
Sure.
Basically, what's going on? Each country in Latin America like a mafia. Each country, they're run by elite families. They've been there for generations, and they're the ones who basically align themselves with USA foreign policy, and basically the USA tells them what to do. Basically, they're the slave managers of our countries, and the USA is a slave owner. They just tell everyone what to do. And these families, they've been running around like in Mexico, literally like three or four families that basically control Mexico City, and that's where the core power it is. You go to each country, it's like run by. I know you in your country, the Pelas, Chamorros, all those guys, like they're the ones who run Nicaragua.
They used to. Nicaragua is kind of an exceptional case, I think, in Hispanoamerica, because that old elite has been not completely disconnected, but they don't necessarily control the country.
Well, I mean, it's like I'm like giving an example, like Chamorros, like
those families, those families, that's true.
Yeah, like those people. You got the other one, like the Baile. I don't know if you know the Baile from Nicaragua, Marfa de Baile. She lives currently in Mexico City. I know actually one of their distant nephews that is related to the Baile family.
Mm-hmm.
If you never heard of Marfa de Baile, she's actually a lady in Mexico City. She's actually best friends with Salma Hayek and all that stuff. She lives in Mexico. She's a Nicaraguan. She actually lives in Mexico City. You can just go type it in, de Baile, Marfa de Baile. She's actually a Nicaraguan Mexican she's like wealthy, billionaire.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, that comes from that family.
Yeah, and basically these families, what they done is like they through periods of time. Let's back it. The last 30 years, basically, most of us kids. I don't know how old you are.
I'm 30. I'm 32.
Okay, you're my age.
Yeah.
Basically, the last 30 plus were basically kids were born in the 80s, especially in the 80s and 70s. Those period of time, they were like literally, it was a war between the people that are like tired of the elite class and the elite class saying we got to run back to the United States, and like basically we need Big Daddy to come help us out. That's what happened in Colombia. That's what happened in Mexico. Ever since the revolution in the early 1900s, basically the elite class ran their ass to the border. They asked basically the U.S. to go help them out, and ever since then, they're the ones been in charge. The same thing happened in Argentina. Same thing was currently happening in Brazil. Same thing would happen in Peru and all these places. So basically, to sum it all up, there's basically these like elite classes that run these countries, and basically they're the bitches to the United States. They tell them what to do, and they do the orders over there. And there's always a struggle back and forth, and that's what's going on. I'm just summing for everyone in the audience. That's all.
Yeah, that's a pretty good, accurate oversimplification. I would say it's kind of a neo-feudal relationship.
Yeah,
but I think those families have, they have a tradition of power, but they don't really have power over their countries anymore. It does vary, but it's really called by the U.S. basically directly now through the U.S. embassy.
Yeah,
for most countries. I think Nicaragua is an exception, which is why Nicaragua is targeted, because it is, one of the few genuinely independent countries in Hispanoamerica. And for that, it suffers economically, of course, right? Like, but
inflation's up there, bro.
But but overall, I think the average Nicaraguan lives better than the average other peoples of Central America, with maybe the exception being Panama.
Not Costa Rica?
I think Costa Rica can be argued, but I think Costa Rica is bolstered because essentially, it's the expats from the West who really are, if you took them out of the picture and then compared, I don't think there'd be a big difference between Costa Rica, the average Costa Rican and the average Nicaraguan.
You are aware in their news outlets in Costa Rica, they're not really fond of the Nicas.
Yeah, totally. I'm aware of that. Like 15% of Costa Ricans are actually Nicaraguan. So it's like there's a big chunk of Nicaraguans already there. And of course, they have a beef.
So the Costa Ricans don't like Nicaraguans, basically.
We don't like Costa Ricans either.
Yeah, it's one of the many family feuds in our countries.
Yeah, because they took a corner of our country dishonestly, that they were basically kind of given to administer during a tough time, and they essentially just stole it and killed a bunch of wealthy Nicaraguan families to keep it. So, there is blood between us. Though, de facto, the relationship, we talk a lot of shit about each other. There's a bunch of Costa Ricans in Nicaragua too. Like, you know what I mean? It's still within family.
Yeah. I mean, it's family feud time. I mean, it's all over these border wars.
Exactly. But,
I mean, it's so basically, let's correlate it back to the original point that you're trying to make. Yeah. You believe all this stuff is just orchestrated by the Anglophones.
Yeah, it comes from what I call jam culture, which is an amalgamation of Judeo, Anglo, and Masonic. You could look at it like the British elite, but it's not just the Brits; it's the Dutch. I mean, the Spanish royal family. I would say. I mean, it's the UN. It's the CFR. It's the Atlanticist powers. It's the West. It's the countries that own the copyright on the label Western, or they're for example, within the European racial politics, they're the real whites, right? Like Italians and Spaniards and Greeks are kind of white, depending when it's convenient. The Slavs as well, when we need to bomb them, they're definitely not white. Even the Germans have a history of being called the Huns when they had to go to war against the Germans. So, very true. So, this elite, I like to point to understand the difference between Hispanoamerica and Anglo-America, I point to two queens that everybody should know a decent amount about. It's Queen Elizabeth from England, right? And then Queen Isabel from Spain. You know,
Gotcha.
And I think both of these women really embody the difference between these two civilizations. You know, Queen Elizabeth didn't have a husband, which was a very weird thing for a queen not to have a king. She is rumored to have been a hermaphrodite. She was into alchemy. Her chief spy and minister was John Dee, who was basically the stereotype the archetype that the character of a wizard is based on. This guy was an alchemist who did some very kinky things throughout Europe during his time. And during Queen Elizabeth's reign is when they had a persecution of Catholics in England, right? That's when Catholics were being drawn and quartered. It's also when when England formed the first colony in what would be known as the United States. They formed the colony of Virginia. Now, calling the colony Virginia is very telling because this woman is persecuting Catholics who believe that the mother of Jesus, Mary, is a saint and holy. And she also calls herself the Virgin Queen. So she was kind of like an alchemical replacement for the British elite or the Anglo elite, where now they no longer venerate Mary, the Virgin Mother of Christ. Now we have a new Virgin Queen. It's Queen Elizabeth. It's Britannia. And so all these things are very esoteric and alchemical. Whereas Isabel was Isabel la Católica. She's known as that, right? She had a husband. She had, King Ferdinand. And she was known to be a very pious woman from different sources in history, which are extremely credible, even by her own husband, who was like a pimp and a player, But the woman, there's different historical stories of when Columbus first sailed back with some Indians, and she got down from her throne and came and kissed the Indian, and basically, she's the one who started this whole effort of the Spanish clerical class to go in a sense, advocate and protect the natives, right? That's where Bartolomé de las Casas eventually came out. She set that tone. So you see how these women have two very different worldviews and value systems. And then you see how the empires they birth have two different value systems. And you pointed it to the kind of the different forms of racism, but there's a Spanish intellect or academic named Gustavo Bueno who explains it as there's a difference between a generative empire and a depredatory empire. And what you can see is that the English empire took a form where we're going to come and we're going to establish a port and just to extract the wealth of the country. Whereas the Spanish came and they fought and they married with the royals and the locals, and they built churches and universities and monasteries and cities. Right, it's a very different pattern of empire.
Sorry, I'm Haniel. In regards to what Rancho is saying, there's this saying that when two Spaniards meet each other, they create a city, and meanwhile, while two British men meet each other, they just create a club. Okay, like a gentleman's club, to see the difference.
All right. It's one of these secret society clubs, right?
No, also, but he's just highlighting the difference, like the different civilizational sense that each country had.
Okay. I mean, well, these are actually these are viewpoints I heard before, to be honest with you. The thing I will say about this is when you get into some of the discussions here is for people to out there be open-minded. That's the thing about it. And that's why, like, when I heard the way you guys were interacting on those panels, I just want to be honest when I'm saying this to you. When you go to those type of spaces, they tend to be more very pro on one side. So when you got into those spaces, you were yelled at, screamed at, spitted at. You were not really like all that stuff because you're on those different types of, basically they're very centric forward. So when I heard you guys start talking, I was like, I may not agree with everything you said, but it was enough to me to say, I want to hear what these guys have to say because they at least got names, dates, numbers, something, because some of these kids are opening their mouths about, these countries in Latin America, for example, or Hispanoamerica, and they're saying all they talk about is skin tone. And I feel like that's a cop out just to get away. Whereas you guys, you actually are going into actual detail and everything like that. I'm not saying I agree with everything you guys are saying, but it's a welcoming, freshening air that there's guys out there that actually did some sort of studies. Yeah. And like, that's the thing that like when people talk to you, and I see some of the comments about you guys, it's like immediately like, unfortunately, you got the label of white supremacists.
What a fucking joke.
That you got the label of that, bro. So that's
you know the irony, Kem, is that on Twitter I've been banned like 6 times, and I've always get banned by white nationalists. It's white nationalists and Latinx women, the ones who report my account and get me banned every single time. So people have this perception because I'm in a sense vindicating the goodness of what the Spanish Empire was. And I'm just being honest and dispassionate about it. And
but you know what's ironic? That everyone can. If you see someone saying, "I'm a proud Colombian," "I'm a proud Mexican," you don't see people calling them, "Oh, you're a white supremacist." No, but, I mean, Mexico destroyed native culture. Mexico also killed natives. Chile destroyed native culture and also killed natives. I mean.
And they did it worse than the Spanish Empire, to be honest, when you add it all up and you toll the bodies together.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know what it is now, what I notice here in the United States, though, when it comes to our nationalities or background, 'cause I don't know what...
because we're brown. They think we're just brown people.
But see, that's what scratches their head, because when they see a Chilean or someone like Messi walking around, or like Canelo walking around speaking Spanish, like their heads explode. The same thing with someone who's like very dark skinned, like David Ortiz, who's a Dominican. Like their heads explode, and they're all confused. And now they're kind of like, right now what they're doing is like they're kind of like picking us and trying to like, we're losing our numbers, so we need to pick up the numbers here.
Yeah, I think that's really accurate what you're saying. And
Haniel, you know who said this?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know who said this? Radical said that on a video. He sat there and said that we need to help get reparations, and we could put on the census and label ourselves as black and boost up the numbers. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it's a repetitive talking point that's been taught on both ends, because I don't know if you heard of David Duke, right?
Yeah, I'm familiar with David Duke.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's certain things he says that could be accurate, but then he went to Mexico.
Yeah.
And he was talking about Spanish culture and everything, which is accurate. I mean, over there it's pretty, they're proud of the Spanish descent, the Spanish architecture. Yeah, yeah. But the thing is with David Duke, unfortunately, all these other people on the Afro side, they make every single thing into a racial thing.
Yeah, they do. They promote the false dialectic of black versus white, which is harmful. You can see it in the way that what we describe in the phenomenon of a Latinxer, which is somebody like Rad Latino, who is like a person who uses the term Latinx as opposed to Hispano or Latino or Latina or Hispana. It's a person who's kind of taking that Kool-Aid in a sense, like feels like, oh yeah, we are also Black Panthers and we need to fight against the white man for like what they did to our ancestors, as if your ancestors weren't Spanish peasants who married an Indian girl from down the street.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, that's another thing that I don't understand, is that this whole notion that every single one of us was raped. Yeah, I'm not denying that
it's a lie.
Me, but the reality is that the majority of it was consensual sex.
Absolutely.
And the one thing that I will add also is that it was not also just the guys, but also the women. Because when women started flocking in as well, they start intermarrying with the population, because that's where my bloodline is.
Yeah,
because
they got with mulattoes and mestizos too, and indios and negros too. Yeah,
they just want to delegitimize us.
Yeah, they want us to have. It's a psychological trick. Look, a tree can only be as strong as its roots are. So if we're a people who don't embrace their roots and don't, understand them spiritually and metaphysically, then we're going to be a tree that can just be, pushed over. And that's essentially what we've been for this last 200 years, where we've kind of suffered from this like weird national psychosis. And who's been able to benefit during that time? Well, it hasn't been us, definitely.
You mean the national pride stuff? There, all these kids with the waving the flag and all that stuff.
No, I'm just talking. I'm just talking in general. In general, you know,
okay.
the general consciousness of Hispanos from whatever countries they're from, there's this weird kind of tear inside. There's these weird kind of hangups inside where like, were my Spanish ancestors rapists to my Indian ancestors? You know, like it may seem insignificant, but it's a buzz in your brain.
It's. I'll be honest with you. I see a lot of that here with the kids, with Hispanic American kids, and I'm just gonna be honest with you. Like Chicano study, I think is absolutely just god horrible.
Yeah, Latin American studies is the same thing.
Latin American studies, Dominican studies. I looked into this stuff. It's all about this guilt tripping thing.
Yeah,
and like it makes and unfortunately, like I give an example of this about Puerto Rico. What do they do when they show Puerto Ricans? New York. They don't show actual Puerto Ricans from Puerto Rico.
Right.
And they like same with Mexicans. They don't show Mexicans from Mexico, or it's either at the border or drug cartel.
They'll show the peasant class laborer, right? As if all Mexicans are peasant class laborers from Oaxaca or, you know, from the hills of Durango. Like, you know, Mexico's a huge country with a huge diverse population, racially and socioeconomically. But
Venezuela's the same way. Before it went to shit. Same thing with Dominican Republic, Cuba.
Always. This is what I call alchemy, and this is why I bring it back to Queen Elizabeth, who was an alchemist queen, right? Another person who followed that tradition was Isaac Newton. You know, basically all these histories of Western thought, you know, down to Darwin and Einstein, and Marx himself, all these things developed out of England. And there's a reason. And I pointed to an alchemical tradition within the English elites. So this is a form of alchemy, you know, this enforcing this false dialectic where they're trying to get you to either be black or white, a Latinx, or what we call a pick-me, right? That's what Andy is. Andy's a pick-me. He's like, pick me, Mr. Whiteman. I want to be on your team. You know what I'm saying? So a pick-me is a person who kind of swings on the political right, whatever that means. And they, in a sense, want to be the gopher boy for the Anglo. And it gives them, they have a very deep sense of inferiority. They don't think that they're capable. OG,
yeah. I'll be honest with you. The people you call the alchemists, I call them the rulers of the Anglophone Empire. I personally believe whatever issues they have in this country, the self-hate that's going on rampant in this country, like particularly from white and black Americans, like because there is a self-hate stuff going on. The falling of the family structure, like it was not like 80 years ago.
No,
I think that's all of it's programmed, completely programmed. Like it's like debacle. They're in sheer terror, like right now, it's really done by this class. Whereas us, most of us are just new arrivals. A lot of us are actually first generations. Most people that are from our countries that are here, the vast majority of them are basically first generations. Basically, people came from the 70s and 80s. Yeah. And we're not in this. We were never gone through that cycle, but they have. But what they're doing with us now, especially the millennials and all that stuff, and now below, they're trying to push the issues that are happening between those two groups onto us,
right.
And that therefore it's like we're the same. Where in reality, OG, you made a very good point. Actually, a lot of black and white Americans, they actually relate more to each other than, let's say, me to them, both of them,
regardless if you're black or white.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I kind of like,
you know what I mean? If you're a black Dominican or a black Cuban, like they still look at you like a Mexican, you know, just to use lack of a better term here.
Well, or I'll give you an example here. I've talked off of YouTube. I talked to plenty of what you call quote unquote Afro Latinos, and you talk to them the same sequence. They went to the United States. What's the first place they want to go to? An Hispanic area. Not African American area, not a white American area, Hispanic area. And they go there and crazy as it sounds, like they actually do talk to get along with like people from like Mexicans or like
they completely integrate.
Same thing, like case example, South Florida as an example. You see that all the time.
Yes.
It's like it's just that But then as you get older, like, hey, we just about our nationalities, whatever. But as we get older, they start pushing all that, slave guild stuff going on by like African Americans. Then you have the white Americans with their issue gripes with each other, and like we're in the middle of this, and then all of a sudden, there's kids out there with this. Now all of a sudden we have this identity crisis stuff.
These racial tensions that are foreign. They're not native or organic to our part of the world.
Exactly.
But notice how Afro-Latinos. I had a few conversations with some Afrocentric Latinos, and they said something like, I have more in common with a guy from Senegal because he's black than with a Venezuelan or with an Argentinian. You know what I mean?
That's not.
I can't believe
the Latinos I talk to don't say that at all. Like, I mean, I'm not saying they can be friends with them.
I'm talking about Afrocentric.
That was probably
Afrocentrics. Yeah,
yeah. That was probably a girl in college. I'm gonna assume, Haniel. Was it a girl in college?
Oh, it was one in college and also one on Twitter.
Yeah.
She's a famous Dominican from Twitter.
These people need to be wholesale rejected by us outright and just basically exiled from
I'll be honest with you when I say this. Listen, I'll be honest with you. It's only coming from. I'm sorry to say, it's coming from this. It's coming from the U.S.
Yeah, it is coming from the U.S.
I mean, if you were to talk to people like that, there's a lot of, like, for example, in Mexico, we have, like, photo shoots, whatever. A lot of those Black Dominican models, they will actually go to Mexico, take photo shoots and everything, say from Colombia, and they never had an issue with Mexico. Nothing at all. Like they say they love Mexico. I was wonderful. It was beautiful. Nothing at all. They open businesses over there now.
When they probably end up with a Mexican husband. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And then you come to the United States, all of a sudden it's like, man, I hate the beaners. I don't know if you heard the guy Kid Organic speak. Oh, I hate these Mexicans. They hate us and all that other stuff. And I'm thinking it's like such deja vu. Even the Afro Latinos that I talk to, they'll tell you straight up, like, when I came to this country, I didn't realize how race obsessed these people are. Like, it's insane. Even the ones from like Argentina, they'll ask, like, what's your race and what's this going on here?
Yeah,
and that's why there's some people, they're like whites from our countries. They don't want to be called white here because they don't want to be lumped with white Americans.
Right. Yeah.
The same thing with the Afro-Latino. But see, guess what happens with that? They start saying it's self-hatred. You hate yourself. They start to guilt.
They start going into their alchemy. But you realize why they're forcing the gringos, whether they're black or white, are forcing this dynamic right now with Rad Latino and Andy, the Latinxer and the Pick Me. And it's because of the demographic moment. You have to understand that right now, if you took a demographic snapshot of the Americas, for every one white American who's on average in his 50s, there's 4 Hispanos, Latinos, if you include Brazil, for every one white guy in his 50s. And these 4 Hispanos are in their 20s.
Bingo. That's the thing.
That's
about
the demographic moment where we're at right now. So that means if these 4 Hispanos have 2 to 3 kids each, it's over. The all political and economic hegemony that the Anglos have enjoyed for only the last 200 years, right? It hasn't been forever this way, is going to be flipped. And so what they're looking for, it's, one of the rules of generalship is if I'm a small force and I'm going to face a force that's 4 times my size, I have to learn how to use the land strategically.
OG.
Let me finish this point. I have to think strategically on how to split that force into 4 little pieces so that I can fight them one by one, because I can fight them one by one, but I can't fight them 4 against 1. And so this alchemy of the Latinxer and the Pick Me and other alchemy, I think the whole gender politics that they're exporting throughout Hispanoamerica, evangelical movements throughout Hispanoamerica. And in fact, you can find paper trails that show that the U.S. government is actually behind these movements. The cocaine business itself is another one. I agree with
you 100%. Right there. Bingo. Right there. They're not going through tinks anymore. They're going through these social movements.
Like, wait. There's an important thing to say here. It is true that historically speaking, indigenism indigenism, which is like this strong focus of indigenous culture, has been promoted by U.S. universities. It is also true that the U.S. have mechanisms like the non-governmental organizations that promote certain ideologies and so on and so on. But many of those Hispanophobic or anti-Spaniards ideologies are not necessarily merely from the U.S. A lot of them were created by Hispanics, by Latinos that had no relation with the U.S. and were in fact very anti-U.S. For example, those. I don't know how can we explain the strong Hispanophobic tendencies that leftist movements had in the 60s, 70s, 70s, and 80s without and they were pro-Soviet Union, not precisely pro-US.
Okay, I know what you're saying. I know what you're talking about. You talking about like the books, like the veins from Latin America. Like
no, that's a we should burn that book. We should censor that book.
I forgot his last name.
Eduardo Galeano. I remember I read that book in high school.
I'll give you an example of this. If you were ever to replay or watch Xtina's panel, because I did the whole 10-hour stuff too. Like, if you were looking at the call-ins that she was allowing in, if you were to hear these guys talk, it was like this. I don't know if you did this, but you need to look at it again. This like desperation because the thing is, most of her audience is mostly African American males.
Yeah,
the vast majority of her audience is mostly African American males because that's like most of her base. So when they were calling in, like for example, Ricardo, that guy, oh my God. Same thing with there's other guys like Jamaican descent, like some of these other guys.
Yeah,
and
I
like,
would say it seems her audience is more like West Indian diaspora, the East Coast,
like that. These guys, they were calling in, they were like begging, like, oh, but the Dominicans and the Puerto Ricans, they look like me, but they didn't want to talk to me. And I didn't know why. And I'm like, come on, bro. We're basically the same people. And I'm like, oh my God, dude. The desperation from these guys. They're desperate to be clean. I'm not lying when I'm saying this. They're like in that Caribbean, West Indies region, for example, they are so clingy. A lot of these countries in Latin America, they're like, they're begging to be accepted. And that's why when you hear the term like Latin America, they want to like, that guy Ricardo, he wanted to kind of like interject into that because I know what he was trying to do. Because therefore, if he gets in, all the French-speaking countries come in, and then all the Dutch people want to come in before they know it, because originally it's supposed to be 19 nations, including 20 that is Puerto Rico. That's basically the line. But they want to add more and more. And we're kind of like, no. This is the lines, 20, and that's it. 20 members of this group, and that's it. And they're trying to like push themselves into part of our group. And that's like what's going on. That's why people like on those channels, they care to audience like, oh, that's true. We do eat the same food. We do eat rice and beans, and we do eat chicken. I'm thinking to myself, like, who does not eat rice and beans and chickens around the world? Like, come on, like it's ridiculous. And
they want to reduce our identity to such. I mean, food. The problem is that African identity in the Americas, Afro-Hispanic identity, because they didn't necessarily did like high culture, they find their cultural expressions in sort of like music, dances, food, and all of that. And we should appreciate that, of course. But behind all of that, there is an ethos of mixing, of cultural mixing. And behind that cultural mixing is Catholicism. Definitely. You know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Transculturalism, I believe.
It's sort of. And they just want to sort of like forget all of that and just reduce our identity to food, to I don't know some.
I know what I do. This is one of the many. This is one of the things they do. They start a lot of guilt tripping. They start saying, but it came from here, and look at the food, so therefore we're both the same. And like you need to accept that. If you don't, then you're a racist or you're a white supremacist. Right. And that's one of the many taxes they do.
But we need to combat against that. And the way we combat against that is by calling out the black gringo for what he is. Call him a fucking gringo. Like you do not own the copyright on Africanicity. You're just one people of the African diaspora. And culturally, you're the least African. Okay? The Hispanos of Afro descent, who may be less black than you if you measure up through DNA, Africa never died in Hispanoamerica, right? It never died.
No, we haven't. Exactly.
It never died and became black. Oh, yeah. It stayed African. So even a white Hispano from the coast, near Cartagena in Colombia, is going to be more African than the average black gringo. And so they need to be put in their place, and they need to be known that, hey, you're a black gringo. You don't even get to step on the toes of even West Indian blacks.
Well, OG, let me interject with that. I mean, we can sit there and say it was due to the conditions here in the United States. This is why. And I understand.
I don't care. That doesn't matter. There's still black gringos. They're still not, just because of that sob story, that doesn't put them in a position to be able to dictate to other African diaspora people what it means to be African.
That's the point I'm trying to make. I remember, and I noticed this too. I remember Boyce Watkins. It was a YouTuber. I did a video about him. And I had an issue when he started saying, I was down in Latin America and South America, and he made like a little cheap shot. And I don't know why they're denial of their blackness, because they're more African than we are. And it was kind of a very cheap shot kind of way,
so he felt whiter,
lost and confused, that kind of thing.
It sounds like he felt whiter than the blacks of Hispanoamerica. It sounds to me like he felt like, oh, those fucking niggers, and he felt like he's the white guy because they're more African than him.
It's a complex thing. It's I don't know what's going on with them. It's
but it needs to be called out. That's the only way. This is a cultural war.
Yeah,
and they're trying to dissect Hispanos to lower that 4-1 advantage down.
You know what? I think.
And so, real quick, Haniel. And so, the way we defeat that, the way we combat against that weapon in the culture war, is by calling them out for what they are. They're black gringos. Stop LARPing like you're anything else, and stop thinking you call the shots. And the way that I really show you how this is true is that the black Hebrew Israelites, correct?
Yeah, I know them already.
When you look at their scheme of the 12 tribes, what's the royal tribe of Judah? Oh, it just happens to be black Americans.
Thank you. Bingo. Bingo. OG, I remember that. I actually questioned that. I said that I asked him, about all the groups in this chart, Judah happens to be
you guys,
African Americans.
Get the fuck out of here!
Come on, man.
But notice,
I told them that the real tribe of Judah is Nicaragua, and they just looked at me like, "Oh fuck, he's on to us."
I noticed that maybe like the affirmation of blackness of Haitians have been historically because of to justify their victimism and also to justify foreign aid and so on. And that's the same thing in the Francophone Antilles.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, the affirmation of, but we don't have that in Hispanic countries. I feel that we don't need, and this is going to create like a contrast with the Anglophobe and with the Anglo-Black.
Yeah.
I think that Hispanic Black do not need to have a constant reaffirmation of blackness because they live blackness. Blackness is there, while and this goes with what Rancho was saying. While in the Anglo world, in the Anglo Black, their blackness is diluted in this sort of like commercial ideology. A commercial identity of rap music, hip hop,
of ghetto culture.
You know what I mean?
They associate. Here's the thing that needs to be understood. They don't talk about Africa. They talk about blackness, right? And it's funny how
weird.
It shows.
What it is, right? OG, you know what they mean by blackness, right?
It's just a bag of skin.
Yeah, no, black. No. Don't think of the word blackness. It's basically it's an encoded word of them saying, "Follow my shit, or I'm going to call you a racist." That's what they're trying to say. It's basically follow my pathology. That's what it means. That's what they're trying to say.
It seems like there's like don't call me out on my temper tantrums. Like the way that I describe white and black gringos, the relationship is this. White gringo is like this old white couple who lives in the suburbs, you know, who like has money, you know, they had a bunch of kids and, you know, they bought a bunch of houses, you know, the typical kind of white success story. And they decided in when they're in their 60s to adopt this basically this crackhead black kid, this crack baby black kid who's like, you know, a fucking huge troublemaker and they can't control him. But like, it's part of their kind of white man's guilt. It's part of their weird fetish, inverted superiority complex where they decided, oh, we're going to go adopt a black kid. Like kind of Madonna was doing this. Wasn't she adopting African kids like 2 at a time? So it's like, that's the dynamic. And these people are too old and tired to deal with this little teenager who's fucking breaking things and going crazy. So they just kind of keep giving into his demands. They don't know how to deal with them. And to me, it's like, that's their problem. But what I'm gonna hold on. Where they're gonna see me is where I see. I empathize with Black Americans. I really do. I grew up around a lot of Black Americans, and I know the history of how they were abused and persecuted, and just these awful things were done to these people to prevent them from ever progressing. So I'm conscious of that. But I am gonna mark the line when they think that they're gonna come and imperialize my people. They're going to have a big problem when they try to do that.
OG, this is the thing about this, and I think we're kind of hitting the same pathway here. I think the analogy is kind of like similar to my porno joke. The thing about it, I'll say it like this. I think the problem is that a lot of the what you call black and white Americans, gringos, what I will say is this. As much as they bicker with each other, they're actually more similar to each other.
They have a kinky fetish for each other.
Huh?
They have a kinky fetish for each other. They like to take each other's wives to their swinger parties.
They have there's a strong sadomasochistic relation between white liberals and black.
And it comes from Puritanism.
And OG, that's what I was trying to say in the beginning of before everything. There's sex fetish.
Yeah, that's why I didn't disagree with you. I was actually, I never had put it in those terms, but there is definitely a sexual thirst.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you watch my there's a video I did regarding something like this. That's the main theme of my channel. We just talk about these like little fetishy stuff going on, and there's a hidden stuff, and that's why all these white nationalists and like the Afrocentrics, or kind of like the guys who go overseas, whatever, these red pill dudes, there is some sort of like weird fetish when it comes to our country. Guys see their content and the way they're talking about us, like we're some sort of zoo creatures, and it's like this weird fetishy, whatever issues they have here, they're bringing that onto us, both of these groups. And we don't, and the thing about it is that we're not aware of this because, number one, most of their content is in the United States with American English. It's until like people like me, I started putting 2 to 2 together, and I was like, "Holy crap! Like, what is all this?" And I started to hear them talk about how like we're gonna claim them, and then we can also say that we're partially part of them and go to their countries and like change the laws over there and like take like land and resources. Because you know why? Because they see their community is dying.
Yeah,
both of them, like their community is like a disaster, is dying. Let's cling on to these people
who are still alive. Let's suck the life force from them.
I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying. I think that's the problem is that Protestantism has a weird relation with sex, in contrast with Catholicism.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, if you I think Protestants have a neurotic and sort of there's this pathological relation with sex.
When they have sex, they pull it out through the pee hole of their pajamas while leaving the light on. I remember when Dave Chappelle made fun of this when they did the wife swapping skit.
Dude, I'm telling you,
he didn't want her to get naked. He just wanted her to like pull her panties to.
I think these guys are running down to our countries. All of these dudes, like all these, not just dudes, but women too. They go crazy in these countries, and it's like that's why I have like if you ever go and watch like type in Spanish like Russian women in Latin America or like what do girls from this country, it's like weird kind of stuff going on because even like Middle Easterns and all this, even African, they'll like say
everybody.
Like
we're handsome people and we're fertile and we're sultry. And
that's exactly what I'm trying to say. This is bingo. This is exactly what's happening. Since we're mostly mixed-looking people, mixed people tend to be very good-looking people.
Yeah.
And they see us, and they're like, my God, these people are so goddamn good-looking. We need their genes.
And virile.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing with Dominican Republic with Black Americans. In real reality, Black Americans are absolutely, literally just when they see Dominicans, they see a community with a family structure, a culture, an identity. Sure. They have businesses, and the people there are good-looking people, and they look at themselves as like fugly, not attractive, and they feel down about themselves. So therefore, what can we do? Drag them down to our space and say we're all the same and have sex with them, and therefore we can get that good gene into us because we look like crap. This is what especially the guys are thinking. And that's what I was talking about in my channel. And this is where all these guys went flipping crazy. And they openly on their channels admit to why they're going to these places and trying to, they talk about this genetic and mixtures. It's the same thing with white Americans. They say the same thing about going to, and it's weird because I really believe that since these guys have been like intermarrying with each other so much that their genetics are kind of like they're not as well as it was before.
Yeah, that's a decent theory, dude. It's like their genetics aren't sparking off anymore.
Because if you look at, for example, white Americans, just look at them like 60 years ago, there's a huge difference. I mean, even
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, the same thing with some of the African Americans. And this is something that I try to tell people, as crazy as it sounds, I'm all for like mixing because if you mix yourself, it's like dogs. Like if the more
you create the super dog,
the stronger the gene pool is. Whereas pure breeds don't last long, and that's what's going on. That's why, like for example, the elite classes in our countries, they were intermarrying, like having sex with their cousins until they sat there. Holy crap, we're falling apart physically. Like literally, we're having Down syndrome. So what they did, they started intermixing with other groups of people, which is like from like the Brazilians mixing with the Argentines. They all started mixing ourselves. The same thing with the society as well, which is why I keep trying to tell people this is why the end result of it is a bunch of people who are mixed, who technically have a healthy look, who are good looking, and have a high energy, high testosterone, highly sexualized group of people. And which is why people from around the world come down to our countries and basically just run cum shop over our places because that's why there's a big fight over our region. Because
I mean, I think it's beyond sex. I think the sexual dynamic you're describing, I think for sure it clearly does play a role. But I think the motivation behind the continued balkanization of Hispanoamerica by jam culture is more to do about resources and power. And yes, that expresses itself through these kind of weird sexual dynamics you're talking about. But I think we should, to be honest, it's fine. Like, you know, we should embrace that because I can think of examples of white Americans and black Americans who've married into Hispano women that I know personally. And I've seen how those men have become, to be honest, Hispanicized. It's like they left their cultures and they said, like, this is a better way of living. And they adopt the culture and they become adopted by the culture, right? So
you know what it is. This is what I'm trying to say to you.
So I don't think it's something to alarm ourselves in. I think what's crucial is that if this is going to happen, we need to be aware of our culture and at the roots, at the very deepest roots of our culture. I think
the problem is hold
on. So that we can contrast our culture with the gringo culture and understand why that culture is bad for you.
Well, OG, listen.
Get what I'm saying?
I agree with you. And I'll tell you why. The reason why it goes with that, because I'll tell you why I say this. Like for me, I also want to include the fact of genetics, because genetics and gene pools, they do kind of matter, because the thing about it is that the reason why this is happening is because if you look at what's going on, the health in this country, it's really bad. Like the thing about it, like you look at the rates of the cancer, all that stuff, is also the longevity here is actually lower than what's being projected. Whereas in these countries, like you live longer lives. Like that's the thing. That's what's
But I would say that most of the health issues of the United States, though genetics does play a role, has to do with the environment and the habits of American.
Well, that's true as well.
The lifestyle of the
nature
versus
nurture. It does play on both roles.
You have to understand that the Hispano culture is more of a like Baroque medieval culture, right? Where there is a thinking of working with your hands is of benefit to you. It's kind of like more old fashioned. This is why Europeans go to Hispanoamerica and are able to get along with Hispanos better than they are with white Anglos or white Americans, because even though they don't have that old world living anymore, they live in that old world. They see that old world every time they go get coffee.
Well, you know
right?
why, right? It's because the United States, the here in the United States, is become a service nation.
From its roots. You have to understand that England. Yeah. But there's three concepts to understand about English history if we really want to understand them in contrast to us. The first one is King Henry VIII, who kicked out the Catholic Church over a divorce that the Pope wasn't granting him with a Spanish princess, by the way. So he didn't grant the divorce, so he kicked out the Catholic Church, and he used this Protestant excuse to basically as an excuse to loot all the churches and the monasteries, which had for about 1,000 years in England accumulated wealth, right? Because back in the day, if you died with money, you would donate some to the monastery for public use, right? So that the peasants could use it, and in exchange of pray for me, right? That's a Catholic tradition. And so Henry looted the churches, kicked the church out. Then his daughter, the hermaphroditic alchemist, basically launches this pirate empire that basically is a mosquito on the Spanish empire that's just there to drain blood in the form of treasure ships. Then you had Oliver Cromwell come in, who came in by killing the last Catholic king of England, right? He beheaded him. And what did Cromwell do? He invited all the Sephardic Jews from Spain and Portugal that had gotten kicked out by Isabel. So now this pirate empire that Cromwell inherited was being financed by the money powers of the Netherlands and Turkey. And now the British Empire is launched in full force.
OG.
Yes.
And OG, have you heard of this thing called the British Israeli Federation?
Absolutely. British Israelism, man. That's rooted in Cromwell.
Federation. But you know what they preach is that the Queen and the royal family of England believes that the Jerusalem, Israel, is that they're the sons of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that they have the rightful ownership.
They're a lost tribe of Israel. You see, and now you see the connection. Now you see the connection between that and now what these black Hebrew Israelites believe. And then now you realize that the black Hebrew Israelites just inherited it from the white gringos.
Yeah.
So they didn't even come up with that shit. They're culturally appropriating British people.
Yeah, they copied it. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's
and so you have to understand this thing at a civilizational, cosmological level, because there's this huge rift that Hispano-America and Anglo-America represent.
Yeah, and that's something that that I would try to tell people, because I watch the local news in our countries, and I notice the stuff that they're preaching right now. For example, like social justices and all that stuff, they're pushing that to our countries as if the issues that are over there is the same as here in the United States.
Yeah, and it's all coming from NGOs that are bankrolled by the same billionaire class.
Yeah.
And our governments aren't doing shit about it. Our governments aren't doing shit about it.
No, they allow them on TV, run around, and they got Gloria Alvarez start talking all the crap. The other dude from Chile, I forgot, and like you got other people in each country just regurgitating like liberal or conservative USA talking points, and it's like they're trying to put it onto us, and it's like one of his like Prager U, that guy, he kind of like
Prager's bitch ass.
Yeah, like that guy, he promotes like, all that stuff, and like he brings on Gloria Alvarez, and that chick goes around each where in Latin America.
Is that lady Nicaraguan?
No, she's a Cuban Guatemalan.
Okay.
She would go around and start saying like, communism is bad. And then, I like all these groups, whether it be conservative or liberal leaning, because it goes back to like, we should be like just like the United States. Like even like the lesbians or the LGBTQ crap in Mexico, they always start talking about we need to change the laws in this country, injustices, and we gotta be just like the United States. And they always be saying the same thing. I'm thinking, wait a minute, why is it gotta be like the United States? Why can't it be like Finland or Norway or something like that? Why the United States? And that's kind of like that's like you said, you are absolutely right. That's their kind of way to go into these countries, infiltrate these nations, start changing their laws to benefit, the Anglo, USA Anglophone, little empire going on, and that's what they're doing it. And like the elite classes are allowing this to happen. And there's a lot of pushback actually in these countries.
Yeah, of course. Because here's the thing that protects Hispanoamerica. It's two things. It's our Catholic culture and our poverty, because it's hard to brainwash a society where all the children don't have iPads at home. It's easy to do it in a society where everybody has satellite TV and everybody has an iPad and an iPhone. The material reality of Hispanoamerica is that most people don't have those things. So it's like a mixed blessing where it's hard. Because of that, it's hard to program these people. And so you have to use NGOs, you have to use the media, you have to use YouTube, you have to use these different methods. But again, their impact is going to be not what they desire. And so, it's going to
backfire down the road because, for example, I'll give you an example of this. Like, I don't know, you're of MGTOW or Red Pill. I think it's all just another USA.
I don't really know about that stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you an example. Like, this thing called Red Pill, for example. It's basically a kind of like a male version feminist group, for example. And you see these guys now going to our countries and pushing that narrative. And it's like they're trying to say it's the same as us. We're basically the same thing. And that, that we're this red pill and all that stuff. And when I heard all that stuff, I talked to one of the guys actually off of YouTube. And I told him that, listen, the problems that you have in your country with you, let's say your society, your relationships, whatever, that's here in the United States. But in our countries, it's completely different. You can't be going around enforcing, your ideology onto us. And that's just one of the many things what I noticed coming out of a lot of these types of social groups. They'll come in and start changing, start acting like we're here to help you and we're fighting for justice. And it's sad because there actually is injustice going on in these countries, but it's the benefit for, the U.S., the Anglophone, the Anglophone, society,
jam culture.
Western
That's
society,
jam culture.
Jam culture. Let's go with that. Jam culture. It benefits basically the jam basically. And they what's going on is that, and I see this throughout each country. I watch their news outlets. I noticed that, for example, Black Lives Matter. Did you know there's Black Lives Matter in Mexico? And there's Black Lives Matter in Colombia. There's Black Lives Matter in Brazil.
Yeah.
There was Black Lives Matter in Argentina. There's Black Lives Matter.
It's a small thing.
Huh?
It's an office. It's an office
example
with,
is that
with
they
two.
go on these programs. Yeah.
What I'm saying, it's going to be an office with 2 or 3, kind of cosmopolitan Hispanos who just came out of college, and 1 white person from the United States or maybe in this case a black person, and they're getting money from a foundation to stir the pot. And I saw this when I was in Nicaragua. I said I was in Nicaragua in 17, remember? And in 18, 6 months later, after I had left, these protests kick off. First about some social security shit. Then it became about a forest. Then it became about, we got to get Danielle out. And then it became about feminism and gay rights. And then it became about the plight of the black Nicaraguans. And I saw this shit. This shit was so obvious because when I was there was a Christian group, an evangelical group. I went to this ice cream shop in this town, Matagalpa, right? And I'm like, damn, this ice cream is bomb. This is like bomb in Santa Monica bomb, right? This is some really high class organic shit. And so I'm like, who owns this shop? Then I find out it's a Californian guy. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You know, we got surfers. We got white surfers who basically live in Nicaragua, right? Expats. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Then I find out this guy has three ice cream shops throughout the country. Then I find out he has another cafe. Then I find out he's actually the leader of this evangelical movement called Young Life. And he goes to the dump where like these poor kids go to like scratch for trash that they can recycle.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, doing stuff on Instagram. And then all the cute Nicaraguan girls down there that I was, dealing with at the time were like, oh yeah, this guy's so cool. He's going to La Chureca to give, food to these kids and I'm going to go help him. And then I'm like, oh, that's the guy from that thing. And I'm like, oh, this motherfucker.
Evangelicals are depredating the population, our poor blacks, our poor natives.
And it's coming from these foundations. It's coming from the elite of gem culture. And again, our governments aren't doing shit about it. So it's up to this same generation, these four guys in between their 20s and their 30s to do something about it. Because if we don't at least call it out, if we don't at least get on YouTube and start talking about this shit, if we don't put up and put up some kind of a struggle for this, then this opportunity that I believe God has graced us with is going to wash us over.
Well, OG, this is what I've been saying for like the last, I think 5 years, actually, because I there was a period of time that I was trying to defend all like these Hispanic groups like by myself because it was like literally no one. And like I would say something similar to like, listen, I always tell them on my channel, listen, guys, like you don't have to agree with everything I say or you say, but if you got people, if they're regardless if they're white or black or whatever Americans, and you're even Hispanic Americans, they're bullying you and like saying that you're lost and confused, for example, it's like stand up and say something. Like, this is not fair. Like you gotta get up and say something. You don't be quiet, say something. And I'll give you an example about this. In Mexico, you heard this thing about Giovanni Ayala, this kid that got shot by a cop.
Oh, in Guadalajara?
They're talking about police brutality and everything. I'm just looking at them like, bro, come on, man. Like, that's been going on for...
Wait, police brutality in Mexico? What a
fucking lie.
What a shock right there. It's like, and then and they were trying to have a protest and everything. They're trying to make it out like a George Floyd kind of thing. And they're doing the same thing in Colombia as well.
Yep.
And they're trying the same thing in Brazil. Yeah.
The thing is that we probably need police brutality. That is, I mean, it's not that we don't. It's not that police brutality is obviously a bad thing, but at the same time, it's the circumstances of our countries.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing about it. I was telling him about Brazil, like, oh no, police brutality in Brazil and blah blah blah, and I'm like, dude, you don't understand. Brazil's different from the United States.
Obviously, bro, you don't see videos in all the videos that you see in Brazil or Mexico or Colombia, Venezuela, of people getting beheaded.
Dude, they're crazy.
You don't see that shit in the U.S.
Or it's people killing cops.
Like, dude, like, don't you understand? Like, don't you understand what's going on? Like, it's really like a war, like over like in these places, like against the cops, like, and that's the thing about it. So they're trying to make it out like the issues that are having here, the same thing as over there, which I try to tell them it's not the same thing.
That's another, you know what? That's another form of the Yankeephilia that our elites always had, and that basically destroyed our countries during the first years of independence. All this it's basically the Masonic Anglophilia that our elites had.
The
that
fresitas.
they see the U.S. as this example, and the U.S. is just
Oh, gee, where's he
reality.
from again? Where's he from again?
Who?
Haniel? Haniel.
He's Venezuelan Dominican.
Bro, you can ask me, bro. I'm actually here. You know? You don't need to say a rancho.
I don't know why I say that. Haniel, where are you from?
I was born in Venezuela, but I was raised in the Dominican Republic, and I live in Miami right now.
Okay. Because I've been down to Miami plenty of times. That's my spot. Southern California and Southern Florida. My main spots.
Yeah, that's good places for us to be. These are going to be the corners of refuge for us when this shit gets worse, because it is going to get worse.
That's our Miami is the el espacio vital of our people, basically, especially Caribbeans.
It's like that's what I was telling a lot of people. They'll tell you straight up. Even the people that live in New York City, I'll be honest with you. You talk to those Dominicans or Ecuadorians and Colombians, they don't want to live over there.
Yeah, you got to get out. You guys got to get out of New York City, go to the Southwest, or go to South Florida.
Like, yeah, basically that's where the hot spot. I mean, like places like Chicago. I've seen some. You look at these people, like a lot of these Hispanic groups that are in these areas. Even the Brazilians that live in Boston, they look so depressed.
Yeah,
they look out of place. Like they don't have a smile on their faces. I'm like, dude, like you need to get out of here. You become like the gringos now. Like you just need to get that smile back.
That's real talk.
The thing is, Miami is a melting pot for Hispanics.
Yeah.
Well, New York is the American melting pot. It's sort of this American melting pot that everything gets diluted there. Well, in Miami, it's not that you get diluted; it's that that's your place.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know how many people from like other Hispanic groups, that's where they vacation most of the time. It's either mostly Southern California and Southern Florida, and like they all hang around and go to the Hispanic hotspots, you know, and like and that's the thing that I try to tell a lot of people sometimes on my channel, that like I talked to the one girl that I talked to. She lives around those types of areas. I know a bunch of girls that said this, and let me tell you right now, as much as these guys from the north keep talking about, that we're all the same and all this and that, but the thing about it is that when you really sit down and you try to talk to a lot of these groups, like even where I'm at, like, do you want to be here? Do you really want to be? They're like, no. In fact, their wish is like, get as much money as possible, build a house in our country, and live over there. They really, and I try to explain this to people like voting, for example, like Trump or Biden, there's a Latino vote, blah, blah, blah. And I know people down, I know Aniela in Miami, like, let's be honest here, like, the majority of the people that are like Hispanos, Latinos, whatever, like they kind of really don't care about that much about voting like that. That's all just public consumption. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just saying from my personal experience, when it comes to like Hispanic groups, they're not usually into like a lot of the politics here that much, and they'll tell you why. It's like
I think Cubans are though.
Huh?
Cubans are, but because of the relation with Cuba.
I think it's more of a regional thing too. That the Cubans are just looking to secure some political power over the region where they are planted and invested. You know.
Well, you know what? You're right.
You can see the same with some of the Mexican kind of working class here in the Southwest. But I think largely what we have to understand is that, like, I don't push for trying to get involved in the political system, because I feel like you're only giving life to the demon. It's like, let it die. Yeah. And I think most Hispanos actually have this sentiment deep down inside in their hearts where it's like, it doesn't make a difference to me. You know, like, I'm here to work. I'm here to try to make some money. Hopefully I can make something happen back home for me, or at worst within these corners of the United States, which are overwhelmingly Hispano. And guess what? Historically, they were as well.
Yeah, like if, for example, like I'll give an example like this, like some of these guys are talking. I'll give an example like Christina, like you can tell right away, like I live in Virginia, and you can tell like she's not happy. Like,
no, of course not.
It's like, girl,
jam
you need
culture,
to live somewhere in South Florida.
Yeah, and I kind of talked to her about that in my interview. That, like, you know, she was talking about how like there was a weird dynamic with her and Salvadorians, and I'm like, well, maybe because they thought you were a Black American. I'm like, I'm curious how it would have been if you grew up in Miami.
Oh, it's different.
Because then you wouldn't feel that pressure to be like, oh yeah, I am African.
You know something, OG? There was a couple of girls, and one of them I know I talked to. One of them was a Afro-Latina, quote unquote. I'm not going to use those terms that much, but from Colombia, more of like your girl, your wife's whatever features.
Yeah.
And she was going off with me a little bit about how that she had an identity crisis because they were about, do you accept your blackness and all that stuff? And it was weird because it was only because she went to a school that was half African American, half, Hispanic, Latinos, whatever. And those questions came from Black Americans and other like Caribs, like Bahamians. But the thing was weird about it was when she told me, I asked her, like, what about when you talk to the Hispanic people? And they're like, no, they didn't even ask questions like that. They just said, you're Colombian? Okay, you're Colombian. And that's it.
Right.
And and that was it. And then, case closed. But when you were going to the other end, it was like questioning of the blackness and all that stuff. And that's when I was trying to alliterate to people. It's like, you guys, and this is a sad thing about it with these white and Black Americans. They could have great relationships with us if they didn't came up so like what's that? How can I say it? If they didn't came so like pressing, like they have to press something onto us. If they came more cordial, I think things would be different because I have no mind working with all types of groups.
Sure.
It's just that what's happening with, I don't know what's going on with them personally, but you can tell there's something going on with their communities, both of them.
Sure. They're both.
Huh?
I said they're both kind of facing death, like there both looking at death and destruction.
Bro, let me tell you something. I had a problem in my college, right?
Yeah.
Because I was sort of like defending the Spanish Empire in conversations and shit. Just you should if you're Hispanic, I don't think you should do that. I don't think if you go to a college, I don't think you should engage in those type of conversations because you're going to get targeted. But yeah, I start and you know what's the funny thing?
You gotta show these niggas what's up, Haniel. You gotta be like, I dare you to target me.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
Of course. I'll maintain my positions.
What happened?
You gotta wave it in the face.
There was this white, super white girl from Virginia, from I don't know, some Northern California or Vermont or Virginia, some white ass state, and she said, "Oh, it's ironic that you defend the Spanish Empire, considering that you come from Venezuela." Like, bitch, shut the fuck up. Like, you're a fucking Anglo Episcopalian, I don't know, some weird shit like that from fucking Virginia, North Virginia, and you're like talking shit about my identity? What is going on?
That's what they do. Like, it's weird. It's like, this is why a lot of the white-looking Hispanic people, and this is where I don't like when it comes to like some of the Africans, they, oh, you want to be white so bad. And I was like, it's weird because the very white-looking Hispanics I talk to, they don't want to be led with. They don't get along with white Americans.
No, that's a funny thing because in Miami,
yeah,
everyone criticized the Cubans supposedly because they want to be white, or they always mention like white Cubans and all of that bullshit. And no, they don't. It's not that they want to be white. It's that they just have political power in Miami because they constructed Miami.
Yeah, and
it's not that they want to be white. They know they're not.
Yeah,
white
they know their Hispano identity and roots probably better than any group in the United States.
You know what? Also, no one talks about those people that were empowered down there. They were the ones who opened the books and opportunities for all the other groups in Latin America countries to come in and settle over there and open businesses and accounts and everything.
Yeah,
they're the ones now on Homestead right now because a lot of Mexicans are going to Homestead. You know this, right?
Yeah, I was just there.
Yeah, and they got land now, man. They got ranches, they got farms there, and they have deals with the Cubans in Miami.
Sure. No, it shows you that we do have an Hispano ethnicity, right? That these national identities, when we're actually with each other, become more regional identities.
Gotcha.
You get what I'm saying? It's like within Mexico, it's such a big country, you can really see it, where it's like, yeah, there's the north, there's the northwest, there's the central part, there's the south part, right?
Mm-hmm.
That expands in a city like Miami and Los Angeles to a certain level, but Los Angeles isn't quite as Hispano as Miami, right? Where the elites of the city are Hispano, not just the working class. So you have a full strata, socioeconomic strata of Hispanos in a Hispano city, and it's just operating as an Hispano city. It's a
example of this also.
It's a business hub of the region, right? If I want to do business in South Central America, the Caribbean, and Mexico, the logical place for me to do business out of is out of Miami.
Yeah, and you know something also, there's another player that you guys forget also is Texas, like San Antonio.
Yeah,
and
Southern Texas,
Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
When I was over there in Corpus Christi, you know, I thought, okay, a bunch of Mexicans, but then when I was walking around, I saw Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Dominicans. I saw like Colombians. I saw people from like, you know, Central America. I saw them from Argentina over there. I was like, what are you guys doing here? But the thing is that since it's like I think it's mostly, you know, Mexican, like half and half, but it's actually majority Mexicans. If you go to like the South part, you'd be surprised there are other Hispanic groups there, and they, like you said, they all these groups got contracts with each other. They all work together. I know people that are in downtown LA, nearby the fashion district.
Yeah,
and you talk to those wholesalers, all those Mexicans. I was like, tell them, yeah, I'm on the East Coast. I said, oh, I got someone that lives somewhere in the Washington Heights area, somewhere in Philadelphia, somewhere in Dorchester. And I was thinking, how do you know? I'm like, wait, how do you know this? And they're like, oh, because I got connections over there. You know, because business, when it comes to economics and everything, all these Hispanic groups, they all work together. And it's a connecting a little system of dots. I can literally look at where you're from, like Inglewood, nearby LA, downtown. I can connect that dot, and eventually from Vegas, that eventually goes to where I'm at.
Right.
You know, and it's a massive dot, because eventually, economically and business-wise, all of us work together.
Yeah. And we all marry and mix. I mean, you're half Peruvian, half Mexican. You know, if there wasn't a culture in common, that'd be a very hard marriage to pull off. But it's not like when a Peruvian marries a Mexican that it's like a foreign culture. It's like another region, right? And there are idiosyncrasies and differences, but it doesn't fool. My wife's Colombian, right? So the difference isn't. It's not ethnic, right? Like I dated.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. It's like
when you date someone from a different race, you know, or different ethnicity.
That's the problem. I think that's the problem. Like, there's a difference dating. Like, for example, I dated a black Peruvian girl one time. There's a difference between dating one over there than is here in the United States.
Yeah,
there's a massive difference. Yeah, and it's like the way you could click is like immediately versus ones in the United States. Or like, you know, with white girls from, like, let's say from Mexico, very white looking girls, it's easier to click with them if you're someone like let's say a Dominican or a Venezuelan compared to a white American.
Absolutely.
But at the same, you know, guys, we were talking about like how the Latino identity gets fragmented here with the Afro-Latino, with the Native Americans and all of that, with the whites also.
The pygmies and the Latinos.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see the use of the word castizo, which is a fucking like category of the 16th century, 17th century.
It was a fucking joke that tercio's
No, you know, KEM, there's like in Wignat's white supremacist groups, there's this constant use of the word castizo, sort of like to make an alliance between white Hispanics and white Americans or some shit like that.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the thing that I don't like, man. I see that all the time.
That term has never been used throughout all my experience in Hispanoamerica. I've never heard that term be used by someone.
They use the word castizo because we have a friend in common, Rancho and I, about his name is Tercio. And he had like a sort of like a weird epoch of transitioning in which he started as a...
He's Venezuelan Peruvian, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but anyway, if Tercio, you're watching this, I say hello to you. But he had this sort of like weird stage of his life in which he was feeling down in America, and he had this weird state of like of a weak nat or white nationalist, white supremacist epoch of his life, an obscure white one.
The Wignat demons took over his heart for a minute, it seems, right?
Yeah, and he coined the term castizo futurism.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because that's what I'm trying to tell people. Like, I see it myself because when I talk to some of these white nationalists, they get somewhat a little bit. They notice that there's like whites, and they want to kind of take. You're not part of these people.
You're not that Indian. You're kind of more like us. Come join us. Give us your energy and your virility and your mind, and help
boost
us
up
win
the numbers. Kind of like that kind of thing. That works. The same thing for the Afro and as well. And it's like kind of like that's why like we're in the middle of something, and your position is like, I heard it too. Like, listen, let's just like put it together here. We're not picking no one's side. We're gonna stand back. We're gonna do our own thing, and if they want to go duke it out, they can duke it out. But we're gonna be on the sidelines.
That's my position. Let them tire themselves out, and then it'll be a lot easier to retake our historical domain within this chunk of the continent, which has never stopped being Hispano, by the way. South Florida and the Southwest has never stopped speaking Spanish, has never stopped having Hispanos living in it.
But we were talking about the castizo, the Afro Latino, the Native American,
the nigstizo. That's what Andy is. He's a nigstizo.
But I think there's a problem about the over-emphatization of nationality. For example, we also should engage with the problem of the overemphasis over your national identity, and sort of like to create this sort of like, I'm Mexican, I have nothing to do with Nicaraguans on some sort of. So that's also a problem.
But I think, to be honest, I see some of that, but it's just I see it spoken on the internet to a smaller level than the other thing. Let's say it's opposite argument. But again, when that example you were giving, Kem, of like the economic ties that are developed, it's like I don't see it on the ground. These people are still working together. They're still doing business together. They're still marrying each other. And it's like it's more like what I call soccer team nationalism. It's not like a real nationalism where, like, let's say the Germans and the French, Yeah,
they're duking out an actual warfare. Yeah, it's kind of like a football rivalry, but everyone goes home and shake hands and make love, kind of that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's not like Poland versus Germany where they really hate each other. And the thing about it is that, like, for example, look what happened in Venezuela, for example, that it was not just, just Colombia, the entire region of Hispanoamerica or Latin America, they were all invested in what was going on, because not only affected just, just Venezuela, it affected all the countries because, economically, politically, socially, we're all tied up together.
Integrated, of course.
Yeah. So it affects all of us. And same thing. If something happens to Brazil right now, let's say they fall like right now, let's say they just had a Black Friday crash. Like, you don't think that affects the entire region?
Yeah.
It does, because socially, politically, economically, we're all like interconnected.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, when you talk about these little rivalries and all that stuff, it's like Costa Ricans and Nicaraguans. Right. Like, how many halves have you seen in your life down there? Half Costa Rican, half Nicaraguans.
Yeah,
get to hate each other.
It's the same thing. You see it with Salvadorians and Mexicans in LA, where it's like, I thought these people hate each other. The third biggest Hispano group in LA is Mexican Salvadorians. You know what I mean?
Well, our main, our main in Mexico. Usually, our issue is like we have like this rivalry with Argentina a lot because we talk smack here and there, but the Argentines that live in Mexico, the guys and the girls, they end up marrying like
they're Mexican. They're Mexican.
I think the dynamic between Argentina and Mexico is one of rivalry, because Argentina became the thing is during the first years of the independence and before that, Mexico was the cultural, economical center of the Hispanic world.
Yeah, New Spain.
Even more than Madrid. Ciudad de Mexico
Absolutely.
was the center.
The de facto capital of the Spanish Empire was Mexico
yeah, I will
City.
say that even more than Madrid. That's funny because when Teresa de Mier, who was a guy who promoted the Mexican independence, when he went to Madrid, he said, "What is this? This is nothing compared to Ciudad de Mexico."
In
the sense that for him, Madrid was like a
pueblo.
something, yeah, exactly, something like that. Probably there's some truth about that, but yeah, Ciudad de Mexico was the center of the Hispanic world. But after the Wars of Independence and all of that, the cultural center of the Hispanic world, and basically the example that everyone followed was Argentina, because they were basically one of the few success stories after the independence.
Yeah, one of the very few ones. Yeah, that's true. And then that went to shit later on within our later generations. And the thing about with you, because you say you're Venezuelan Dominican, it's like right now, like there's a lot of, obviously on YouTube, you see a lot of Venezuelans in Spanish, like saying some grimy stuff about other Hispanic groups. And like people.
Oh yeah, it's just like minimal. I think Venezuelans are very the nature of the Venezuelan is to be very they are arrogant, and they tend to be very amicable, but in a weird.
Yeah, let's be honest here. My defense when they talk about Venezuela being cocky and arrogant, my question is, who isn't in our region cocky and arrogant?
No, yeah, that's true.
Like everyone's cocky and arrogant and conceited. Like it's everywhere. Like especially like in Miami, where everyone's cocky and arrogant. Especially even where I am at, like Mexicans are not cocky and arrogant. Is not Nicaraguans prideful and arrogant. Mm-hmm. It's like so when we see them being cocky and arrogant, it's kind of like okay, like it's kind of like okay, it's kind of like what I see in Mexico when I see people talking about about how great Mexico is, and kind of like ego boost.
It's like ball busting. It's ball busting.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't know if you guys watch football or soccer in our countries. I don't know if you guys follow sports like that.
No, not really.
Yeah, well, you should. I mean, well, I do all the time, and it's always I always equated that.
Yeah, like exactly. It's the soccer team nationalism, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like in the World Cup. Like we all have our leagues, and they were our local teams, and then we root for our teams, and then we root against other leagues, other countries, and then the rivalries amongst our teams, but then we have the national teams come together, and then the sports follow the national team, and then when the national teams compete in the World Cup separately, like in the World Cup, I don't know if you noticed, Anya, because you're in Miami, like I'll guarantee you, every time a Hispanic or Latin American country was competing against someone else, I get you, everyone at the bar was cheering for that team. Like Ecuador versus, like, let's say Switzerland, I'll bet you everyone.
No, of course. I think all Latin Americans, we all do that.
That's a good
The problem
point.
is that I think the national, that extreme nationalism, you don't see it too much in Miami because we all get diluted in this sort of like Hispanic identity, which I think we should celebrate. I think for me, nationalism is a problem in our. I think the national. Wait, Rancho, there's echo.
Is it good now?
So, yeah. Okay. So nationalism in our regions have this. The thing is, we failed to be Latin Americans, and that's why we became Venezuelans. We became, let's not say Latin American, let's say Hispanic American. We fell to be Hispanic Americans, and that's why we are Chileans, we're Argentinians, we're Mexicans, and we're Venezuelans. You know what I mean? We separate because we fail in this sort of this American unity.
Yeah, because what happened was we fell in that market because our egos got into the way of it. Like, I'm Mexican, so therefore my food is better than your food. So therefore, you start petty fighting a little bit.
The only country that said something when the United States invaded Mexico was Guatemala. You know.
Yeah.
And I think that was a disaster.
Wait,
you know?
say it again. Say it again, Haniel. I didn't hear you.
That the only country that said something when the U.S. invaded Mexico was Guatemala.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Guatemala always comes through, man. It also sent troops to Argentina during the Falkland War.
No, yeah, I mean, the Falkland Wars was a very good. It was a white pill because a lot of Latin Americans supported Argentina besides the Chileans because Chile, but at the same time, I mean, you saw it today. There were like Nicaraguans burning the Mexican after the soccer game. You know?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wait, which one?
I don't know, Salvadorians or something.
I think it was
like that. But I think
Basically, what's going on is that a lot. See, this is all a football thing. Central Americans, they got this ego thing about Mexico because we usually just kick their asses all the time in football, and
true?
They get all emotional about
Mexicans weren't that good at soccer. Like they talk.
Yeah, I know.
But I think that's important. But I don't think we should minimize that. I mean, soccer is basically a palliative for civil war. You know, we don't need civil wars. We have soccer.
But Honduras and El Salvador went to war over a soccer game in the 60s.
Yeah, but the thing about it is this: I compare it as like a football rivalry, but it's nowhere close to like you see in the Middle East, for example. We're not going and literally blowing up each other up and super arming each other and trying to kill each other. The only thing close towards that is maybe what's going on with Colombia and Venezuela, but that's all USA buildup. USA, Iran, but it's not really Colombia and Venezuela. It's like Colombia and Venezuela don't want to go to war with each other. Actually, they actually are literally like cousins.
Yeah,
but like, I don't think there's a problem with a military problem with Venezuelans and Colombia.
They want it. The United States want it. They wanted Brazil and Colombia to basically say, yeah, when you guys come in, we'll back you up. And the Colombians and the Brazilians didn't have the national support to do that.
I think. I mean, we don't go to wars with each other because we have the U.S. there controlling all the regions.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, I mean, if probably without the U.S., Mexico will have invaded Central America.
I don't think Mexico would need to invade Central America. I think Central America would be like, yo, let's just be Mexico again.
I don't know about that, dude.
I mean, either. I think
I don't know about that.
I have a problem with.
Because you guys are thinking about that the model is the Mexican city elite is going to be ruling. And like we have to get rid of that concept because that's not even working for Mexico. Mexico can barely hold on to its borders right now. And it's precisely because of the elite in Mexico City who's calling the shots. See, and you see that same problem in Bogota, you see that same problem in Lima, you see it in Buenos Aires, right? It's always this urban elite who's the problem. If it was not for them, like we're talking about economic integration in South America. The one thing stopping economic integration in South America from being greater than it naturally would is these elites from these cities.
Yeah, it's the elite class. They're the ones basically they don't want to have a stronger middle class. This is why Colombia and Mexico, for example, they don't have a strong middle class. And they just want to be in that state.
If there was a system that worked for all the regions of Mexico, that same system would work for all the regions of old New Spain, Cuba, Central America, the Southwest, and the Philippines even included. That's the issue. There needs to be a system that works for all these people. The reality is we actually have a model that did work for 300 years. I'm not saying we should retake that exact model, but we should look at that model, see how it actually worked in the day-to-day administration, and take the goodness from it and say, hey, maybe this is an alternative model that we should seek to employ. Because you guys both rejected and said, I don't know about that. Well, where did Castro go when he wanted to take over Cuba from Batista?
Mexico, Guatemala.
Where did Sandino go before he started his war against the Yankees in the mountains of Nicaragua? Mexico.
It's always Mexico. I mean,
so de facto, Mexico's already playing this role. How many Mexicans fought in the Sandinista for the Sandinistas? There was a bunch of Mexicans from Sinaloa who fought for the Sandinistas.
You know what's funny about that? Like, I don't like when people tell me like it's usually Americans. They'll come up and tell me, Mexico's the most hated country in Latin America. No one likes Mexico. I was like thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. Because,
who said that?
Because I'm like, we're actually the ones that actually helped out a lot of Latin American countries.
Yeah.
And that's actually the historical. And I'm like, and they're kind of telling me like, oh no, but this guy told me that. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what kind of low-class bum you've been talking to, but
yeah, exactly.
in history, if you look at history, Mexico has always been a place of like
it's the center.
refuge.
It's the center of our empire, of our cultural empire, whether we like it or not.
The problem with Mexico is that está cercado por Estados Unidos.
That is the problem.
That's really. That's why they say it's the board. It says that the things it's a blessing and also a curse because your border to the U.S.
It's a fucking curse.
That's what the saying goes. It's a blessing, also as a curse. Like you can prosper because you have the dollar. At the same time, it's like they have such massive influence.
It's not worth it. Mexico should be a superpower.
And what about the historical figures that Mexico celebrate? Benito Juarez. I mean, Mexico is not going to change. I mean, I don't think if Mexicans keep celebrating that fucking Vende Patria, I don't think anything is going to change.
Yeah, I agree that the national ethos or mythos of these countries needs to be thrown out. And I think this generation is the one really discovering that, because this is the generation really engaging and saying, look, we've lived 200 years as a republic yet. We lived 300 years as an empire before that. And so that's enough history to actually go back and be honest and say like, really what happened here? And, if you look at like the Nicaraguan flag, it has like this red French revolutionary beret in it. And it's like, clearly that comes from the fucking Masons. And it's like, well, where do the Masons come from? Oh, they come from England? Oh, okay. So my flag comes from a gringo culture, and yet we're all about being anti-gringo. Like that's the one thing that Nicaraguan identity is all about.
I think the central or the political center of the Hispanic world. I don't agree with the thesis that it's Mexico precisely because of the United States.
It used to be.
Oh no, yeah, but I think we need the country. I think we should there should be something with Uruguay, Argentina, and Brazil. That's that may be
too gay.
Essential.
They're too white, Argentina and Uruguay, and they're too gay and they're too liberal.
No, I think the problem with Argentina is that is right now there's an economic crisis going on. So I don't.
The only one I can think of that's stable is probably like Chile.
Chile used to be stable. Chile's a fucking shipwreck.
I know. No, what happened? I mean, with Chile, I think Chile is going to have the first postmodern constitution. I think Chile is going to be the first one that is going to have the.
You guys want to know where it should be, and you're going to say I'm biased because I'm Nicaraguan, but it really is Nicaragua. I mean, from a geographic standpoint, it does make the most sense.
What are you talking about?
Nicaragua should be the center of the Novo Hispano Empire.
Nicaragua had some figures like Sandino, which and Rubén Darío. I think those are like the main figures
what?
that are
look at a map
for Hispanic America, but I don't think Nicaragua was.
No, of course not. I'm being facetious, but I'm proposing it. I'm proposing it as a center because if you look at it geographically, it is in the geographic center of Hispanoamerica.
I will say this. I agree
and
with,
the Caribbean.
I will say this. I think if there's probably going to be the Southern Cone areas.
I don't see that.
Like a federation of some sort.
Because they're farther from the U.S.,
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter when you have ICBMs and navies everywhere and submarines everywhere. That shit doesn't matter. Those areas...
I mean, you have that with Colombia near Nicaragua.
Yeah, but Colombians don't know how to drive them. The Americans didn't give them instruction manuals for it. They just have them there.
But I mean... But yeah, I don't know if Argentina, because Argentina is going to an economic crisis right now.
It might be Miami, but it's like in the empire.
No, but Miami is in the empire. So I think Brazil. I mean, we always ignore Brazil, but Brazil needs to play a huge role in
Brazil's got too many problems
event.
of its own, man.
And even and even Spain, you know.
Spain is too close to Europe.
No. In the sense that the problem with Spain is that they decided when Spain becomes more European, they become less Hispanic.
That's the problem with Spain right now. What's going on? They made a mistake with the EU. That's the thing with them. They made a big mistake.
If we don't have exactly, and Spain should be sort of like the and sort of an example, and they should constantly push for a Hispanic Union. That was actually the program that Franco had in geopolitics, like this constant like push for Hispanic unity. And I think it's like the foreign policy of Spain should be focused on that, because what the reason for the existence of Spain is not Europe. Spain in Europe is irrelevant. Like, it makes no sense. Spain in Europe is like Finland.
That's why it's
like
being
nothing.
broken into pieces.
Yeah, it has no historical reason. It's just Finland. It's just a useless country. I mean, Finland controlled the Soviet Union. They fought against the Soviet. I mean, that's a good thing. But at the same time, it has no historical importance. The historical importance, the existential reason, the existential nature of Spain is in Hispanic America. Without Hispanic America, Spain
is pointless.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
Pointless.
But it's not going to come from Spain, and I don't think it's going to come from Argentina and Uruguay. I hate to sound racist, but it's because they're too white and they're too gay. They need more mestizo blood down there. And so that's why I'm saying it's going to be Guatemala to Nicaragua. I'm telling you. The last shall be first. These are like the countries that are like having a tough time and all the gangs and shit.
I mean, Guatemala's too Mayan.
Yeah, that's okay. But no, it's not. It's not that Mayan. It's like 50% Mayan. But now mix it in with Mexico and Central America and the Caribbean. And look, if you...
There was a comment about, what about Paraguay? Well...
I don't know about Paraguay.
Paraguay as the center of I don't know.
Look, the reason why the Spanish lost their empire, when you look at it on a map geopolitically, is because they weren't able to control access to the Caribbean, right? The English and the French and the Dutch were able to establish bases within the Caribbean. They needed to block the Caribbean out like an outer ring from Florida, the Gulf, Mexico, Central America, the top part of South America, Venezuela and Colombia, basically. They needed to block that ring off.
And people don't realize this, but again, like they always talk about the Spanish, but to be honest, if you remember, we also got invaded by the Brits and also the French and the Dutch.
That's because they weren't able to court. You see, if you courted off, I wish I had a map right here, but if you courted off, think about Florida in your mind, down to Cuba, down to Hispaniola, down to Puerto Rico, down to the Lesser Antilles, down to Venezuela. If you treated that like a water wall, then none of those attacks would have ever happened on Mexico or Colombia, Cartagena, and all these coastal cities. They would have never had access into them. And
Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires is way down there, but it's not in its way down there. You see, if you defend the core of the empire de facto was the Caribbean, right? That's why Mexico City was the core, because from Mexico City you hopped over to the Pacific and now you're in the Asian trade. So that was the de facto core of the empire. The Spanish didn't cordon off that core the way they should have. And then they split it at the seams between New Granada and Mexico, or New Spain, excuse me. And the reason why was because New Spain at the very far northern half, like the Southwest, California, Texas, the Southwest, it's almost like that should have been a different viceroyalty. But the Caribbean basin, the Gulf, in Florida, that should be one geopolitical structure where enemies cannot sail into. Somebody should have hired me in the Navy back in the day, man. I would have solved this shit.
Well, yeah, again, this is the thing what happened with the Spanish over back in those days. They just didn't know how to control the I guess the colonies and everything. And this goes back to a lot of the historical points of what you said in reference. It's if you look at it right now, like it seems to me like anywhere in I know you guys call it Hispanic America. I call it Latin America, but I know what you mean by Hispanic America because there's people out there that want to jump into the party.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like it's still Latin America and it's still 20 members and that's it. Nothing will change ever again.
No, I don't have any problem with. I don't have like necessarily like any problem with the term Latin America because initially some people thought it as just like a synonym for Hispanic America. Like they didn't like.
Yeah.
It wasn't like an ideological term. You know what I mean? It was just it was an ideological term, but as a synonym of Hispanic America.
But the problem is now
now they want to perceive that dude, you see arguments that they say that Hispanic ignores indigenous and African, but Latino embrace them. And what the fuck? How the fuck does Latino embrace indigenous, like the word?
You know what I've seen so far? I've seen for example, countries like Tobago, Trinidad, even countries like
Jamaica,
Haiti, they're all like you saw on those panels, they're all like they're trying their best to kind of cling on and say, yeah, we're just like you, we're basically. I'm like, no, it's not on the list. It's like, look, it's right here, 20 members and that's it, nothing else.
Well,
sorry.
I think we have to be smart and we have to understand that these people are looking for a better system too. Jam culture is bad for them as well. It's bad for white Americans. It's bad for black Americans. It's bad for the whole world. This is an evil, nefarious system that's just anti-human at the end of the day. And so I think these nations that you spoke of that are within our regions, we need to offer them a means and a system to integrate if they follow our method. And that's the crucial part, is that you have to understand Hispanoamerica.
That's what I'm talking about.
You have to understand, and that's what I mean. Back to the point where we're like talking about how Hispanic men or women are intermixing with other people. I think it's fine so long as the children of those relationships have an Hispano identity. And I think what you see, by and large, default is that the children actually do seek to embrace more of their Hispano identity than they do their Anglo or their Black Gringo identity.
But you know what the thing is, though? The thing about it is that, like you said, it's like the way you approach is like, look, guys, if you have something to offer, we got no problem, trading or having deals
working with you guys, integrating with you guys.
Yeah, but the thing is, you got guys like Ricardo, for example, on that live stream. I know it goes back to that panel, the way he was like pandering.
Yeah. No, that needs to be quashed. That cannot be tolerated. That cannot be tolerated.
The pandering and the guilt shaming and that kind of thing, that's where I have an issue with. Now, if he came with an economical plan, hey, look, I'm Haitian. Listen, we can work a deal here. We can do it. Like something, that approach is completely different. But the way came it off was kind of like.
I even said that, a federation between Dominican Republic and Haiti is not a bad idea. The problem is that the way they want to push that is by basically saying,
on their terms.
Dominicans, you should hate Spain, and Haiti were basically the liberators. That's basically
it's the same thing that the Black Gringos are pushing on Hispanos of African descent. They want to push blackness on their terms. They want to dictate it. They want to define it. And we have to kowtow to them. And it's like, no, you're retarded. There's 700 million of us. There's about 40 million of you at most.
OG, have you ever heard? There was a guy by the name of this guy named. I don't know if you heard this YouTuber, but it was one YouTuber, and I had an issue with him. And one of the things was he was saying, because he's like partially partially Puerto Rican and Jamaican, but he was born and raised in New York City. And then he started saying
those guys are.
Yeah, like basically he started because he typical. He doesn't speak does not speak any of the language, just doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
But then he started talking about how like that Dominican and Cuba and Puerto Rico is not part of Latin America, that they're part of the West Indies, and that they relate more to them than is anywhere in Latin America. And I was like,
I told you, those Afro-Caribbean, they want to basically say that Dominicans have nothing to do with Latin American. Just like they're just like
they actually say this in the CARICOM forums. They literally like say them, and they get mad. Like for example, when I think the whole thing the CARICOM want to put sanctions on Dominican Republic, and the funny thing was
fuck them.
The
Dominican
DR,
Republic doesn't need CARICOM. Dominican Republic needs Central America, South America, and Mexico.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to tell them. Like, look, they don't need They don't need CARICOM. They have a deal with Central America. The CAP, the DR agreement.
CARICOM needs Hispanoamerica. This is what needs to be pushed. And I wouldn't get too caught up in that, because I know some Jamaicans who've married Nicaraguans and they become Nicaraguan, like full front. I actually know another Jamaican who lives in TJ now because he doesn't want to be in the U.S. He wants to be amongst Hispanics. So there are means for these people to assimilate and Hispanicize. You know, in LA, you see it a lot. Everybody is Hispanicized to a certain level, even the Persians and the Armenians.
I mean, so I'm just shocked. I'll be honest with you. I'm not from California, but I'm in shock, like how literally every group has like a Mexican cousin. Like you go to like North Hollywood, it's like Mexicans mixing with whites. You go to South Los Angeles, Mexicans and African Americans. Orange County, where my uncle's at right now, he's married to a woman from an Arab lady, and then there's a lot of Arab and Mexican. I mean, Long Beach, bunch of Cambodian, Filipino, Mexicans. It's like insane, like how.
But insane, like what you have to see is that this is like, what? No, this is representative of a long-standing reality and tradition from the Spanish Empire, even before the Spanish Empire. Where did the Spanish get this knack for kind of race mixing and absorbing people? They got it from the Romans, right? The Romans are the ones who really like built an institution around that. Like they would conquer nations on the concept of, we're going to mix with them. From the very beginning, the rape of the Sabine is the foundation of the city of Rome, right? They didn't have enough women, so they went to their neighbors and basically stole their women. So there's a historical precedent to this. Yeah.
And by the way, it's not just like a one gender thing, like the other groups, like the guys, whatever. It goes both ways, males and females.
Yes,
it's funny because you go to some areas, like into certain areas, it's just crazy how like dominant the even in New York City, like que lo que and all that stuff. Like I don't know what was going on, but I heard Italians saying those phrases. Same thing, even African Americans now going around. You hear those type of like Dominican phrases, because Dominican culture is very dominant in New York City. That you see other groups of like non-Hispanic groups like adopting what they're saying. It's just
it's Hispanicization. It's Hispanicization. Hispanicization.
Yeah.
And so again, we have to offer these people means of Hispanicization. Like we have to say, like, look, you can convert to our religion. You can integrate with us. We will accept you. We don't care what race you are, but you have to have our values and worldview. And so before we can offer that to them, we need to be familiar with ourselves. We need to understand ourselves at that root level and the proper hierarchy of that identity. Yes.
And OG, that's the thing about it. When I talk to people about like, the Hispanic people are racist and colorism and they need to, all that crap, I tell them, listen, it's not really that. It's just that they don't want the kids to lose the culture, basically. And you need to go, in order to understand that, you have to understand that when you listen to them, it's like language is very important, culture, because the thing is that once you like, let's say, marry out or whatever, and you have the kids here and the kids don't learn the culture of the parent that's, Hispanic or Latino, then what happens is that kid loses that value. Then before you know it, he loses the identity. And that's why I was trying to tell people. So if you want to marry into these groups, I just want to let you know, like, bro,
you're going to be expected to adopt the values of that group.
Yeah. Kids, learn the language, learn the history of the country, and kind of blend in and kind of like start to like understand it. So therefore, it'll be easy transition. Therefore, when the kids grow up, they won't be quote unquote confused, because what I noticed with some of these kids who are like half and half, I like ask them about like their parents and if they teach you anything, they say no. And now you got these kids that are a little bit kind of lost. They don't know where they're going. And I kind of tell them, I said, look, here's the reality of it. You know, I know your dad or mom is black or white, whatever. But at the end of the day, like the identity you have in you, you're like, it's stronger than those identities, because whether you like it or not, our culture are very domineering. So so what I would tell them is that it's going to come out of you eventually. You know, you're going to start listening to the music. It's not right now, but it's going to come out eventually. Yeah. And because remember, these type of cultures, like Colombian culture and all that stuff, these countries are very like these are very dominant types of cultures, so it overwhelms you. That's why, like, you go to Southwest Texas, man. Like, you go to like, even I wasn't shocked when I was over there that you even had like African American guys and girls, like, you know, singing bachata music and all that stuff. And I was like, whoa, what's all this? Because I'm not from those areas.
Yeah.
But when you go over there, you see that, and you know, it's that's why, like, a lot of the, I don't know if you're a Trump supporter or whatever.
I'm indifferent to politics.
Yeah. Okay. So when people like Trump supporters come in and talk about, you know, culture and everything, hold on a second here. He's got basically like the culture and everything. And I'll be honest with you, OG, they'll come in and talk about, you know, oh no, remember that guy, the fat dude, the guy about, if you know, the Mexicans come, you know, you have every taco truck on every corner, for example.
I don't remember.
And he says that we're a very dominant culture and everything. He's not necessarily lying about that. Like, I heard him talk. He was kind of stupid, but he wasn't really that far off a little bit. I know it's not crazy.
I think you're right, but I don't think that the domination comes from like an act of aggression. It's more like we're so well rooted that you can't, like, again, you can't dig the tree out. Our roots are so much deeper and stronger because
very much bingo. That's the way.
Yeah, and so we're able to absorb these people in a way they can never absorb us. Like, I just saw this video of this black girl who was raised by a couple from Zacatecas, and she was like a crack baby herself. And this Mexican couple adopted her, took her back to Zacatecas, and she grew up on a farm, and now she's like a Mexican singer. She's black. She's black. She's Black American. But she's Mexican. Yeah. And she even married a Mexican guy. And it's like, no, for sure she's going to marry a Mexican guy. Because she's going to feel like better provided for, cared for, loved, and taken care of by a Mexican man compared to the average black gringo.
It's the same. It's when I mean, this is, which is perfectly about domineering culture. They think of that with the way the people here think about it is we're going to take over.
Right.
And they don't understand that dominant means like it's a very strong presence to the point that you kind of like eventually kind of be absorbed, but doesn't mean it's like we're going to take over by force. It's more like you're going to like it. It's kind of like you're going to like the Mexican food to the point that you want to eat it every day, and it's under your free will, basically.
Yeah, that's exact. And I think one of the ways the stereotypes of Hispanos are they're very seductive people, and I think there's a coincidence in that. If an individual has a stereotype of being seductive and attractive, it's because the culture that they come from has those qualities.
Yeah,
and so people come to Hispanoamerica. Like, I have a cousin who's married with a Dutch guy in Nicaragua, and like this Dutch guy is more Nicaraguan than like most Nicaraguans. Like, this guy completely went native. You know, like he was absorbed by the culture.
Dude, if you type in Spanish like Russian girls in Latin America, bro, there's this thing called Gringo T. I forgot what are the channels. It's crazy to see like there was a Russian girl with like a Mexican accent. And like, you know, she'd been living for like, she got married, and then all of a sudden, within like 10 years, of like she's like full blown, like speaking. There's even TikTok where they're just talking about like, you know, gringos like turning to Mexicans, and it's nothing but white girls that are married to Mexican guys, for example, and like the kids are like, sorry, the women started like listening to ranchera music and all that stuff, Mexican food and all that stuff, and it completely just like, transform. It's like funny as hell, and it's not just even coming from the guys, but also the girls too, like you said before.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is here, and I always try to tell people about this, is that it is kind of true. Like within the next couple of decades, the majority of the lineage coming from this country will be coming from, Latin America versus Europe. Right now, the majority of the lineage is still like Europe, but then it's slowly changing.
Barely, yeah.
Huh?
I said just barely.
Yeah, barely. But then sooner or later, like, it's gonna be mostly from Latin America. It's like for New York City, for example. You know what I mean? Like Hispanic, particularly like Dominicans. You know what I mean? Dominican, half Dominican. I've seen half Turkish, half Dominican, half Italian, half Dominican.
That's funny.
Half Dominican, half
Irish.
Pakistani, half Dominican, something else.
That's
They got. I was like, even my own family, for example. Older sister's married to a white dude. My younger sister married to a Dominican. My older brother's married to a Cambodian lady, and my younger brother is going to get engaged with like a Trinidadian girl, black Trinidadian girl. It's just like it's like, and the thing about it is that it's actually kind of it's kind of like normal to see these type of unions, because the way we view race is just not the same as the way the United States does.
Yeah. And do you want to understand why that is? That's rooted in, and I know this gets a little cerebral, but it's rooted in like ancient apostolic Catholic theology, where it's understood that Christ had two natures, right? They have the proper understanding Christ was both God and man. And I know this may seem cerebral, but it's almost like Christ was spiritually mestizo, okay? And at the same time, because Christ is God, he's part of the Trinity. But at the same time, because he's man is now able to kind of transcend into kind of godhood with a little g, right? Men can kind of enjoy a piece of God. And so the Anglos, when they broke away from this theological understanding, they basically, like, if you ask, again, we talked about the Virgin, right? If you ask a Protestant, like, hey, is Mary the mother of God? They'll be like, no. And then if you ask them, well, is Christ God? They'll be like, yeah, kind of. So they kind of fall into this Christian heresy that may seem disconnected and irrelevant, but it actually has a huge difference in how cultures grow. And you can see it in how a Spanish conquistador who was like a soldier of fortune, this like alpha Chad asshole guy who just helped defeat the city with his Indian allies and took a wife. He no matter how superior he thought of himself, he at the end of the day recognized, oh, this woman, even though she comes from a culture that I consider inferior to me, is still made in the image and likeness of God. She is still worthy of the dignity of at least having me recognize my children with her.
Gotcha. I mean, it's extraordinary type of things, and something I knew that for a long period of time, that when I was here in the United States, like, because like every time when I hear people criticize, let's say for example, like Mexicans or this and that and all that stuff, it's kind of like you feel kind of bad, for example, and then when I go back home, it's like kind of like a 180. It's kind of like it's just like kind of like the veil kind of like lifts all that, and you feel like more relaxed. And this is coming from the fact that here in the United States, there's some sort of weird, like, aura around here. This weird culture, kind of, for example, not just race obsessed, but like, pressure, and it's coming to like our direction, and you don't know what it is, but like once you kind of break it down, like the way let's say your channel is doing it, or the way I kind of break it down a little bit in my certain perspectives, and you kind of realize, okay, time out. There's something going on here. Why are you doing this to us and all this and that?
Yeah.
And you kind of realize that that unfortunately a lot of people here have been so much indoctrinated.
Yes.
To the point that they become zombies, and it's kind of like they're coming after, us a little bit, actually a lot. And I just
we're
feel
being
like
targeted. Our countries are being targeted.
And this is something that you said on your stuff, whether or not people agree with you or not, or say, I always say on my platform, people will agree with me or not, just be vocal, like say something. If there's someone trying to push you or guilt trip you, say something, like, don't. And I try to tell on the channel here, like, try to speak out, say something, be vocal, have an opinion, like, because it seems to me that they're trying to like kind of bully us. I know in the end it's not going to work because we're just laugh it off.
Right.
But it's enough. But I'm mostly concerned about is a lot of the ones here,
right,
like the Hispanic American kids, because they're the ones that they're trying to get to use as little paddle waggles to go down there and put all their stuff and their rhetoric here. They want to go down there. Yes. And kind of push the little narratives down there.
Yeah, that's what DACA's about. they want to put the Hispano kids through their colleges so that they're infected with this bullshit, and they go down back home, and then they infect the kids down there. And things like Instagram are crucial for it, because all the girls in Latin America are on Instagram, right? And so they're gonna get a dosage of that same indoctrination and that same culture. So again, it falls on our shoulders. It falls on the men, especially of this generation. Not saying that the women don't have a role to play. Of course they do. But we have to be men for our women. You know what I'm saying? We have to step up to the plate, and we have to say, like, no, we're gonna mark the line here. And at the very least, we're gonna call your shit out. We may not have all the weapons and the institutions in place to be able to fight you quite in the same way you're fighting us. But we understand that there is a culture war, and that in any war of any form, you have to combat it. And
it's a mind fuck. It's a mind fuck.
But we have to send that mind fuck back. And again, to give you the example of the concept of the black gringo, like, it's crucial for us to put that concept out there and let them know what they are, and let them know that we know what they are, both the black ones and the white ones. At the same time, be compassionate and say, look, it does suck, the luck of the draw that you got. This is the lottery. You came out of that womb. But if you want to collaborate, if you want to benefit from us, there is a way. We are open to that. But again, it has to be under this system. That's exactly
what I said before. I told them all the time, I said, listen, if you really want to do a deal, hey, we're open. Come to the meeting and bring in the following: paper, pencil, and a credit card. And, let's work a deal together. And but coming in with guilt shaming tactics and saying and pointing the finger and all that stuff, that's not going to work.
White voodoo.
Yeah, it's like, guilt tripping and all that stuff. The same thing with some of the a lot of the white Americans now with this whole little women's they have. They do the same thing too. It's kind of like look,
absolutely. It's a gringo versus Hispano. That's the real dialectic. It's not black versus white. That's a false dialectic. It's not Andy versus Rad Latino. It's not Pygmies versus Latinxers. It's gringos versus Hispanos. And both of those labels are not racial labels. They're cultural, civilizational.
I'll be honest with you, OG. I talked to other groups about this, like the Asian groups, the African groups, the groups outside the United States that came here, or first generation.
Yeah.
They're actually kind of aware of this as well.
They are, totally.
They're fully aware, and they're kind of like in a similar state, like kind of like, I don't want to get involved in this. The Asian groups don't want to the Middle Easterners don't want to get involved. None of them want to get involved. They're like, no, we're going to do our own thing over here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and the thing about they're looking for a better system for themselves. And again, we are in a position that if we understand our roots, metaphysically, spiritually, intellectually, culturally, if we understand really who we are in this moment historically, this is why I call it El Momento Hispano, then we would see that opportunity is in our hands. These people are looking for us to present something for them, because if what we present is a better alternative than what they have now, they will reject what they have now. Most of them will.
Oh yeah, I mean, dude, I told you all the time, listen, if all you guys were just today were labeled as Brazilians, you all would be jumping for joy. Because you'll be like seen now as exotic and cultured and be one of the beautiful people. I said as an example, But the thing about it is just that, right now with the USA culture now, it's literally just dead. It looks like a dead body walking around.
Yeah. Their roots are cut. They have no live roots. That tree's roots have been severed, and there's nothing left. That tree is just drying and rotting out.
Yeah, and that's something that you said before about regarding to a lot of what's going on. Like there's no point in watering; it's just dead.
Yeah,
and they're trying. And I think what it is we got a dead tree here. We'll might as well go on these other trees and grab onto their fruits and labor. And it's like, whoa, time out. Like, wait a minute. Like, you can't, because that's where we need to feed our family with that tree. But we can work together and make a deal here. But the behavior you had feeding that tree ain't going to happen here.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
you destroyed that tree. And that's something that and I talked to a lot of white American guys about this, and I kind of tell them all the time. I said, look, the family structure from your group is really bad.
Right.
Even from the middle upper class, it's bad. And the way, from even the courting, the dating scene, all that stuff is just bad. And that affects the family structure. It affects the marriage, the types of people you married. And now you got a whole generation of cycles of basically,
trauma.
Unfortunately, bastardized families that don't do anything. And that's why when these people come in, these immigrants that come from other countries, they have intact families. They're very more family oriented, all that stuff. They're
traditional. They have traditional gender roles.
Yeah. And then you see that and you're like, well, what happened to us? And then that was you 50 plus years ago. Now look at you now.
Right.
And now you see these other groups coming in, and now they're coming in, they're economically competing with you. And that's why there's this rush with particularly white Americans to kind of get as much wealth and hold on to as much as we can, because these young groups coming in are going to come and take over. That's what's happening to my industry with construction, hardscaping and landscaping. Most of the people now, a lot of the younger business owners, literally all of them are Hispanics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of
literally
course.
Almost all of them are. They're not.
You're seeing a huge entrepreneurial surge amongst Hispanos, and this highlights, Kem, that us pochos are in a unique advantage situation. If we stepped out and we saw the moment for what it is, we'd realize couple phenomenons here, that we're already integrated as Hispanos, regardless of nationality, right? We already we because we're here in the borderlands or in the actual enemy territory, we can see more drastically the difference culturally between them and us.
There's a big difference.
More than people down there can. Where
the way we
they're
talk,
seeing it from
the way we
away.
move around, the way
our
we
values, the way we live. So we're already integrated. We can see more drastically that cultural difference, which I think furthers that integration, right? Because here it's again, your nationality becomes more of a regional identity more than an actual nationality. At the same time, because we're here, we have more influence over our countries in Hispanoamerica, right? When you go home to your hometown, they might look at you like, oh, you know more about something, or you're onto something with a better edge than we are back here. And at the same time, we have access to capital. We have access to technical insights and training that is extremely valuable. That means that we can go back home and we can start setting up businesses. We can start building new towns in a sense, or we can take over towns. And now we can start having a dominant political influence in our own countries, which actually will be competitive to these criollo classes that we've already pointed out as being a huge problem in the
basically what you're saying is that the people that are in the working class here that came for opportunities here, they're building up and I know this, they're actually competing and trying to create their own middle class to therefore compete against, let's say, the elite class that's been ruling for all this time. That's what a lot of people are saying, like, that's what even I was doing, like just trying to go back and invest and make money. Yes. So therefore we can
and it's happening. It's happening already. Like we already know a bunch of people who came here, worked for 4 or 5 years, saved a bunch of money. They had 3 kids and a wife back home. They went back home and opened up a taller de mecánica or whatever.
Yeah,
you know
of course. And that's the thing about the unfortunately the Americans here, like they don't understand like where what we're seeing things. They're thinking that we're coming here to take over and somehow take some land from Nebraska and they can make it to Beanerville, and that's what their plan is. I'm like, no. We're here to come here, work, and make our money and help.
The fuck out.
Not only come here to help your ass, we're also helping our ass and help our countries back home at the same fucking time.
Right.
Because whether you like it or not, these towns that y'all keep abandoning, we're the ones that are fixing it up. There's so many stories like Hazleton, Pennsylvania, or cow towns that are losing it, or areas like in like Lawrence, they were just decimated. They're all left there. All Hispanics came in and fixed everything up. And then
name me a town, because I actually want to follow this up. Give me one of those towns names that you remember off the top of your head.
One of it was one of the big ones people talk about was Hazleton, Pennsylvania.
Okay, I'll look it up. Yeah, and if you
that whole
really
immigration debate over that crap,
yeah.
like it was basically a bunch of Dominicans, and Hazleton was kind of going broke, and Hazleton, and then these Dominicans started showing up and opening up businesses, but then all the white folks got pissed off saying, "What's up with these illegals and all that stuff and blah blah blah," and they didn't realize that they actually helped a lot of those places. Same thing happened in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Well, if you look at Miami, I mean, Miami itself is the perfect example. It was built by Cuban capital and then supplemented by Colombian capital because of the narco trade. Compton, oh my God, that's a perfect example.
Compton's another one.
If Compton was fully a Mexican city, it'd be like Downey, which I don't know if you know about Downey, but Downey's kind of like the Mexican Beverly Hills, right?
Yeah, I'm telling you, like in Compton, it just fixed up dramatically. It's like, and at the same time, they're trying to make it in the media. While I was down there, they're trying to make it into a whole, oh my God, they're taking over. But what they don't realize is that
they're improving.
There's actually even African Americans who lived there. They said it's better off than it was back in the 90s. And they actually have businesses over there as well that work with Hispanic groups as well. I mean, it's just so many things that they're just leaving out on the table. That's so like, that's why I was like telling people, because I'm in construction and hardscaping and landscaping. Mm-hmm. So I'm in the middle of all of like what people are talking about, like the labor industry, because I'm there like in front and centered. So when people start telling me about like, towns falling apart or whatever, and here comes these once again, these Hispanic people, or what you call illegals, whatever, they're coming in and they're fixing the place up. And one example is Homestead. Remember Homestead before?
Yeah, Homestead, Florida. I was actually there, dude. I want to go look at a farm.
Yeah, you go. No, dude. Before it was worse, bro. It was worse, and they screwed until the Mexicans started showing up, and the business people started showing up and buying up land, fixed the whole place up. Same thing in now happening in Florida City. Another place, Mexico Town in Detroit.
Wow.
You go over there. They fixed it. Before it was abandoned places. It was everything until those people started showing up, fixed the whole thing up. Wow. You just type in Mexico Town, Detroit, you'll see what I'm talking about. And yet no one talks about these places. Same thing in Omaha and all these places. Same thing in Iowa.
Yeah, we're a revitalizing force economically, spiritually, culturally, because again, I like to use the metaphorical language of roots and trees. If you look at the Hispano tree, the roots have never been severed. The tree itself has been covered up by jam culture, right? They've thrown cardboard over it. They try to block the sunlight, but those roots are still green. And you can see this expressed today culturally by no matter what country of Hispanoamerica you go to, folkloric music is still being sung and recorded right now. So
Can I show you a video?
Sure, yeah. The folklore is not dead, right? Whereas the Anglos cut themselves off from these roots a long time ago, and the only reason why their tree has stayed alive has been by alchemy.
Have you seen this video?
No, I haven't seen it.
Y'all that I seen yesterday that made me smile, but it hurt me to my heart. There's a house next door to me that's been abandoned, and the yard, the grass high as hell and everything. And there's a couple of abandoned cars out there beside the house. Well, yesterday I get off work about 7 o'clock. A Mexican guy pulled up. He said, "These your cars?" I said, "No." He said, "I just bought this house, man." I said, "All right, that's what's up." He was like, "You know whose cars these is?" He said, "No." He said, "Well, I bought the house, not the cars." Okay, I'm like, cool. I'm thinking he just coming to look at the house. I go back in the house, do a little straighten up. I swear to God, I walk back at the house. Now I'm getting off about 7:20. It's fucking 9 Mexican trucks just pull up. They got fucking beer, lights, and shit, right? So I'm like, what y'all finna do? He said, we finna fix this house. I said, what kind of crew you got working after 7 o'clock? He said, these my friends. The fucking house is fixed this morning. They went in there and drywalled that fucking house. Wow.
Wow,
I just left out of there. It was a fucking abandoned house. That bitch looked new this morning.
Wow.
Ooh.
Wow.
It was an abandoned fucking house. And it looked new this morning. It's an old African proverb. Many hands make light work. I just don't think they're better than us. I just think we won't do nothing together. Wow. You're not hearing what the fuck I'm saying. It was an abandoned house yesterday at 7:15. That bitch is new this morning.
Oh, man.
He got a tax lien house.
Glory to God.
I can't wait to see what they do. I can't wait to see is one family gonna live in there. Is they gonna? I'm gonna get to know the motherfuckers.
Oh, man. That's real talk.
When I make some money, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna bring us together, and I'm not fucking with a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of videos like this. I mean,
that is powerful,
I've been
dude. That is one of the most powerful things I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I'm not joking. Like they're like behind the scenes.
Yeah,
like a lot of black and like a lot of white Americans. There's kind of like that quiet. I don't want to say it, but admiration, a little bit. We call a little bit of jealousy.
Yes,
that they know that we have a family structure. They see the masculinity, the feminine, women are feminine. They see all of that stuff. The kids are working, and it's like that old school mentality.
Yep.
Which they look at and they start to cry a little bit because that's what they were.
That's what they used to have
decades ago.
Yep.
And yeah, there's more. I mean, I forgot. There was a white guy that was like, wait, hold on a second.
That's really powerful, man. I'm really glad you shared that with me.
What was it? What was it? There was a guy out here that was saying something like, what was it? I think it was, I forgot. It was like this Mexican, what was it? I forget. It was this one guy out here. Oh my God, I remember his.
Take your time. I want to see it. I'm trying to take notes.
There's a lot of videos like this. I've been doing this for years. I've been on YouTube for years. Yeah. I see them talk like
yeah, because I think what's happening is that, you know, they're beyond the TV. They're rubbing shoulders with us. They're working with us. They're dealing with us. They're seeing the difference in how we operate and how they were taught that the world actually works. And again, we should take advantage of that by literally putting a hand out, like put a hand out to be shaken. And now if it doesn't get shaken and they refuse it, don't ever put your hand out again. But every person deserves to be embraced once, and if they don't want to get with the program, then that'll be their issue. But we'll win a lot of great people over by doing that.
Let me see here. There was another guy. He had an extra channel here. What was it? Hold on a second. Channels. He had like another channel. Like I forgot what it was. This guy named Nick Shell. He talks about like this talk. He has another one. What was it? Mexican men, machismo, homeless. He was talking about how like he says that he's basically a white guy of like Mexican descent, like fourth generation Mexican descent.
Yeah.
And he was basically saying about how like I never seen a homeless Mexican guy ever.
Yeah, it's hard.
And it's like I've never seen. Huh?
No, I was saying that it's hard to.
Like I've never seen it. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, buddy. I'm here.
Huh?
Can you hear me?
Okay. What are you about? Yeah, I can hear you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm listening.
No. I was basically saying that he was basically embarking on the fact that it was hard to find a Mexican homeless person.
Yeah.
And then they were starting to equate that to why is that? And then they started saying that it must be due to, machismo. And in their culture, if you were to beg for money, is seen as a disgrace, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That mantra. And he was saying it, and oh my God, I'm literally going to try to find this one. Oh my God. I don't know why I was typing it in. What was it? Hold on a second. I mean, like I said, so what are your thoughts about the video? Hello?
I'm sorry. Say it again, buddy.
I said that. What were your thoughts on the video?
Man, I thought that video was extremely powerful. I think right there it just proves everything that we've been talking about, where these people are desperate for a means out. And at times the tone can be aggressive and disrespectful, and it needs to be checked and corrected. But at the same time, I think we should have a little bit of compassion for these people and sincerely offer them a means to say, hey, look, if you want to get with our car, if you want to get with our program, it's open to you. Again, you just have to adopt our values and worldview.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. Like, I'm not bad. We're not, like I told people, Hispanic people are not really these evil, racist people that you kind of like all these like crazy people that want to take over. I'm like, really, we're not like that. Like, we're actually very lenient people.
Yeah. And like,
if you just realize that, then everything will be fine. But some of these people, unfortunately, they've been indoctrinated because they've been told that we're all out to get them and kill them.
No, they need to be humbled. They need humility, and that's what's lacking. That's what stops them. You see, this man was crying tears of humility. He saw that, maybe I was thinking I'm the shit or that I'm superior, but here came these people, and one day were able to change an abandoned house. And, that those were tears of humility. Those are the tears that like you have when like you make confession at church. You know what I mean? Like you're just completely floored by humility onto something greater.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And, it's sad to say that, but that African American community once upon a time was a really great.
Yeah, they were resilient people.
They really were, and I'm not. And I know what you were saying, about it. Wait, I found it here. And what you were saying about it, we're not saying it out of like, oh man, you're talking, bad. No, I studied like African American. I look at back in the day, and it used to be, good people. Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a difficult question. But see, for me, this channel is about being honest. And at the risk of being politically incorrect, I'm willing to ask questions that help us see the bigger picture. So here it is. Why is it that I've never seen a Mexican homeless person? I never have. Now, granted, consider this. I live in Nashville. I've lived here for over 11 years in Nashville. Nashville is known for its homeless population, okay? There's a large number, a large percentage of homeless people who end up in Nashville, okay? We've got the Nashville Rescue Mission. We've got a lot of things to help them. But if you drive through Nashville on your way to work, you're going to see homeless people. There's a lot of them. And in the many years of commuting to work, I would catch a glimpse of them. What I noticed is not once did I see one that was Mexican. Most of them were white. Some were African American, but most were white. And another strange observation is the men were never bald. I don't know why it is, but homeless men, I never saw a bald homeless man. They always had this full, thick head of hair, which that's on my other channel, which is called Nick Shell. I talk about predicting hair loss and habits. But back to this, why is it that I have never seen a Mexican homeless person, but I've seen a lot of Mexican people, I've seen a lot of homeless people all day long in Nashville for year after year and year. Why don't Mexican homeless people, why don't I see them? I'm sure someone in the comments would say, well, I've seen them before. Yeah, one. But it's very rare. It's very rare to see someone who's Mexican and homeless in America. At least in Nashville, I've never seen it. So the immediate theory is that if you are Mexican and you are in America, especially perhaps if you weren't born here, that you've got quite the community. You've got the family community. You've got a system in place in which you take care of each other. And so I understand that. But I guess, and I admit this, I admit that I'm naive when it comes to understanding the whole concept of homeless people. I guess it's a psychological thing, that's holding them back from getting a job and be able to function in society the way the rest of us are.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, you're hearing that? I hear a noise in the back.
I heard the video.
Okay, guy.
And all that. But either way, that's aside from the point. That's a whole different topic. What specifically about Mexican people keeps them from ending up as homeless on the streets? Why is it when I see Mexican people, I see the hardest working people I've ever seen in my life? They take the jobs that Americans don't want. You're going to have people say, well, they're coming over here and they're taking our jobs. No, they're not. You're not climbing orange trees in Florida. You're not picking raspberries and strawberries in California. You're not doing that. You never did. You never wanted to. Mexican people are very hardworking people. So is it a coincidence that we also I've never seen a Mexican homeless person? Now, in the comments, please don't tell me that you've seen a Mexican homeless person before. I don't care about the exception to the rule. I care about the trend. It's rare to see Mexican homeless people as compared to white people, white men. And the theory goes that white men are the most privileged demographic in America. If you're a white male, then you've got everything going for you. Yet, when I see homeless people in Nashville, I see white men, not Mexican men. So, do you have anything to add to this? This is undeniably a trend, right? It's the truth. Why, if white men are so privileged, which I can totally understand how they are, why are they ending up homeless, but not Mexican men? Mexican men, many of them who may or may not be here legally, but they find work, they find ways to not end up living on the streets asking other people for money. I'm naive. I don't understand. I want to be enlightened. I can only learn and become a better person if you are willing to help me in the comments.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I saw it.
You're and this was a response to that. it's another. He found a response towards that. This was a funny one. It's a little bit long, but like there's tons of videos like this.
After watching my videos, they're often disappointed. Let's check out a video I made a while back. It has proved to be quite popular over the years. The video I made a while back was called, "Why Do I Never See Mexican Homeless People?" Here's a comment I received from Cynthia Santovina. Quote, "In Mexican culture, machismo. And what is manly is very, very important to the males. A man who begs for money, or a man who asks women for money, or asks women to split the check on a date, or men who can't provide for his woman is seen as no longer a man, but weak and a disgrace. Masculinity is very important to Mexican males. On the other hand, many whites are seen begging because they are probably products of the 1960s and hippie era, where people were expected to share what they had with everyone, something like communal living, where people took care of each other and shared whatever they had."
Does that sound familiar, what you've been preaching?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not just like you or me seeing this, or the girl that you were reading. Even guys like him are seeing this. The black dude crying is seeing this. It's like, and that's the thing that I'll be watching these videos. It's like you'll see stuff like this constantly. And that's why I was thinking while hearing you talk, I was like, well, he's not necessarily that crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, well, because right now you're labeled as the crazy white supremacy guy, but the reality is that no, there really is actually a problem going on here. We can see it.
Right.
Other people can see it. It's just that it's kind of like you see a kid with a booger out. You want to tell him that the booger's out, bro. Like, you need to clean it up, but he doesn't want to believe it. And stuff like that. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot of videos like this. A lot.
I think what's happening right now is that we're finally putting words to what we're seeing, and we're trying to understand it at that kind of macro scale. Both left and right, up and down, in and out. We're really trying to we're coming to grips with the gringo and ourselves, and at the same time, the gringo is coming to grips with himself and us. That's kind of this moment. That's kind of this moment that where I'm gonna have to look this up. Mexico Town, Detroit. I'm gonna have to get going pretty soon, brother. It's been a huge pleasure talking to you and sharing with you. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things
that you and me can see eye to eye now.
Yeah, one of the things that I caution about that video where he said, like, because Mexicans are doing jobs that Americans won't do. I wouldn't necessarily take pride in that, because the reality is that we're being used as cheap labor, which is extracting our resource value, our labor resource value from our countries and giving it to the gringos, just the way you would extract gold from our mountains. It works the same way. American workers should be paid enough to where they're gonna go pick raspberries. That job needs to increase its salary, because the pressure of wanting to keep those strawberries artificially cheap means that you're going to destabilize Mexico through nefarious financial schemes, and then you're going to import that labor resource so that they can pick the strawberries at an artificially cheaper rate.
And OG, and I'll be honest when I say this to you. Let me explain something to you. When you talk about that, I know exactly what you're talking about. Here's the difference, though. The difference is that people talk about the quote-unquote people are, oh, you want to be slaves. The difference is that those people, they end up owning their own businesses. That's what happened to people that work in landscaping.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But those people would end up having businesses in their own countries as well. You know, if they weren't being shipped around and moved around by financial situations around the world. I'm talking things like NAFTA, right? Which NAFTA basically was a scheme to get Mexican farmers to lose their land and come to the north for jobs, which is not good for Mexico.
Which is funny because it's funny because when NAFTA came in, the protest was against Mexico, was from Mexicans, and they were calling it. And what's funny about that is that when the Mexicans were protesting against NAFTA, then the USA came in and started calling them a bunch of communists, which is odd to me because when Trump came in and wanted to get rid of NAFTA, he was presented as conservative. He cares about America,
right?
Which doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, right. He's not being a commie. Well, you see, again, you see examples of alchemy, right? Like Anglos are very good at alchemy. That's why they like to get along with the Kabbalists. That's why Masonry comes from there's not a coincidence from these things. What's the state religion of the United States? It's Masonry, right? That's what all the presidents are. They're all Masons. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's just, that's what it is. So again, we're at this moment historically, demographically, where it's like, we're finally taking a moment to get to know ourselves. What is it that makes us? What are the roots of our identity?
Yeah.
And how does that contrast and juxtapose itself to the gringo? And the gringo is going through the same process. It's like a getting to know themselves process. But the difference is that they're at the twilight of their age demographically, and we're at the most viral peak of our lives, right? Us millennials, like we have to begin that transition into being men with a capital M, taking wives, starting families, having children, raising them the right way with the right values that, make it so that a boy, tightens his belt before he goes and begs for something, right? Like,
or just look, man, same thing with me growing up. Like my dad drive me ass to work and use my hands.
Yeah.
So by the time I'm 18 years old, I already know how to work.
Exactly. Same thing.
The kids here, they've been pampered experience so much,
right?
That that by the time they hit 18, they can't go outside and work. They never work in their entire lives.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I highlight, that it's like, you see the Russians have Russian school on the weekends for their kids. The Vietnamese have Vietnamese school for the kids. The Chinese. We need to create Hispano schools. We need to give our children the education of knowing who they are culturally, ethnically, so that they have those strong roots and that they feel a positive pressure to succeed, to contribute to their people and embrace themselves and see like, wow, ethnically, we're the third biggest ethnic group in the world after the Chinese and the Indians, but why are we in this inferior position where we should be in the dominant position in this continent like we were at one point? And, I think all things work for Providence at the end of the day. This is part of a process. There's a reason why we're going through what we're going through. There needed to be a humbling. We needed to learn something. And I really think that the world is in our hands, but we have to meet it. It's not, life isn't going to force itself on us. We have to go meet life where those opportunities are presented. And I think millennials and Zoomers are playing a huge, huge role in making that Momento Hispano happen.
Yeah, I mean, I agree entirely. And, for people out there don't agree, I certain things I may not agree with you. Same thing what you say about me, but it's glad to talk. I know it's refreshing that, we went back and forth, and that we can, that, I'm not some guy, some pusher who doesn't know anything. Obviously, we talked for a long period of time, man. Yeah. So we're picking our brains out a little bit. I appreciate a lot of the stuff that you shared with me. It really just helps confirm a lot of the stuff that, we've been noticing. Yeah, you're not crazy and all that stuff. Right, I know. Right. You got to love evidence. These kids want receipts. Well, we got them receipts. Go play. Go next time when someone talks about that. Go play that video, and you tell them. Okay, what do you think about that? That'll shut them the fuck up. They're gonna be like, And why again, is it fine? Again, we have to let them know you're a gringo. Whether you're black or white, you're a gringo. And this is where your values come from. This is the way you see the world. And this is why your life sucks compared to us. Even though we're in an inferior position superficially, we're still smiling. We're still having kids. We're still thriving. We're still playing the guitar at family parties. Right? Yeah. And, it's like I said, it's all about cooperation. And we don't mind helping anyone. Like, I really don't have a problem. We're not. We are the type of people who, no matter how little food there is in the house, we're going to scrape a plate together and give it to the neighbor if he doesn't have any food. That's the type of people we are. Like we have a tradition of adopting like our
down and out cousins or taking in some kid from the neighborhood who like didn't have parents. Like
look at the region itself. We brought in the Asian groups, the Arab groups from all the wars, and then they all infused into the cultures.
Yeah, they you lose track of them after 2 generations. They become whatever country they're in. They become Hispanos.
Even the Spanish, the kids that I know that are like first generation Spanish in our countries, they even say they're just Mexicans.
Yeah.
You know, they're proud to be. I know a girl who's French Mexican.
Sure, yeah.
She's proud to be Mexican.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know a lot of Italians in Hispanoamerica. Like I said, I have a cousin who's married with a Dutch guy, and yeah, he's teaching his kids Dutch, but his kids are Nicaraguan 100%. You know?
Yeah, and I'll guarantee you, that when the kids grow up, they're gonna end up marrying, other.
Of course.
Yeah, and that's the same thing with even the. I met so many halves and halves. And like they end up marrying guys from like these other countries down there because they say they relate more to them, and it's like it's kind of like we're like a really big nightclub that we see everyone pokes all the lights and everything, and they're like, yeah, come on in, and then we just like, look, you can come in. It's just that we don't want no rowdy noise you did in the other place.
Exactly. Behave.
Yeah, but other than that, have a good time.
Right.
And that's the way I feel like we are, and I feel like I know that when with my channel or your channel, we kind of like start to critique someone's behavior, they immediately get offensive and they made like, "Oh, you hate us." When in reality, it's like, no, we're pointing out what's going on, and like if you just fix those things up, maybe we can just. Then we can come together. But that's on your end. You got to fix your part. I can't do it for you.
Right. And I'm not gonna hold you less accountable because of your past. Like that shit doesn't matter. Like this is life. Everybody's got a sob story. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Man up. Para de ser un llorón and se macho. You know what I mean? Like this is how we live. This is a standard we hold ourselves up to. We're not imposing a different standard on other people. Yeah, we're imposing the exact same standard.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I feel, I have a heart for Americans. I'm American myself. I have a heart for them too. Like what's going on with them. I understand that there's a lot of screwed up things going on. At the same time, I can't be the one helping you out. You gotta help yourself. I'll meet you halfway, but you gotta get up. We can sit there and tell them that, and like that's the thing about it. So it is what it is.
Well, brother, it's been a pleasure, man. I gotta get going. I really enjoyed chatting with you. And yeah, I actually, if you don't mind, I recorded this as well, so I'm probably gonna pop it up on my channel because I think there's a lot of good stuff that came out.
Okay, I mean, good to you, man. Thanks for having me, bro. I really,
Yeah, I'm gonna look into the stuff you shared too, man. Those are great videos, man. Well, we'll talk some more. Ken. Take care, brother. Nice to meet you.
All right, take care, bro.
Cuídate.